Hi, my name's Ian Thompson. I'm a reporter with the Register, and I'm standing in for Leo Laporte in this Sunday's The Week in Tech Roundup. With me in the studio, we had Alex Wilhelm, who is the editor-in-chief of Crunchbase, Lisa Schmeisser from IT Pro, and Skyping in from Houston, Dwight Silverman, who's been the Houston Chronicle's tech guy for longer than most of us have been in the industry and has some fascinating insights. In this week's show, we'll be discussing Google 20 years on, the recent shenanigans in the Senate over North Korean hackers, the non-appearance of Google to explain themselves to our nation's elected representatives, and the ongoing debate into the Supreme Court justice. We're also looking at holes in the International Space Station and whether it's really worth reconsidering your choice of browser.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Hello, this is Twit, episode 683, recorded on the 9th of September 2018, here at the Twit Studios in Petaluma, the peak of Mount Stupid.
This Week in Tech is brought to you by Ring. Ring's Alarm Security Kit is a smarter way to protect your entire home. Go to ring.com/twit to learn how you can get whole home security for only $10 a month. And by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans, introducing Rate Shield Approval. If you're in the market to buy a home, Rate Shield Approval locks up your rate for up to 90 days while you shop. It's a real game changer. Learn more and get started at rocketmortgage.com/twit2. And by FreshBooks, the ridiculously easy-to-use cloud accounting software helping small business owners thrive. Try it free for 30 days at freshbooks.com/twit. And by Wasabi Hot Cloud Storage. From the founders of Carbonite comes the cloud storage technology that's disrupting the industry. See for yourself with free unlimited storage for a month. Go to wasabi.com, click free trial, and use the offer code TWIT.
Hi, this is Ian Thompson, reporter of the Register, standing in for Leo Laporte, who is currently over the other side of the Atlantic and doing weird and wonderful things on the coast of Europe and Africa. This will be Twit, and we have a distinguished cornucopia of computing talent around me. First off, let's start off with Dwight. Dwight's, as you well know, this is his 50th show.
5-0.
I know, the big 5-0. How does it feel?
It's a surprise, but yeah, it feels just right.
Excellent. Well, Dwight, of course, is the editor of Tech Burger for the Houston Chronicle, and with me in the studio also is Lisa Schmeisser, editor of IT Pro, and a frequent guest on the show as well. Not quite as up to Dwight, but we're looking.
No, I'd have to by a factor of 8. But I have a goal now. I have a new goal. So.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Well, you know, it's everyone needs to go in, but it's and you've just been up in the countryside, I understand.
I have. I spent the weekend on the Russian River. It was lovely.
Fantastic. I'm very jealous. And last but by no means least, Alex Wilhelm, editor of Crunchbase, and come up from the Bay for the show today. It's how's your week been? You had Disrupt this week, and
it was a busy one. It was a short week, but it didn't feel short at all. It actually felt quite long. So I'm glad we're all back together to kind of go over the stuff that I'm sure I missed, because it was hectic as heck.
It's always the way with conferences. You sort of you go around and it's, you know what it's like. I mean, you got.
I didn't get sick though. Like, I'm not sick.
Really?
Yes.
I'm very well. Don't jinx me. It's too early in the show for that. But like, I actually went for a little bit and left. So I think I got away with it, which would be the first disrupt ever that didn't give me the plague. So,
I'm anticipating going to Microsoft Ignite in 2 weeks, and I'm keeping it down to 2 days in the hopes that I avoid the sickness that way too. I'm flying in Sunday night, flying out Tuesday night. So.
I did 6 days in Vegas for B-Sides, Black Hat, and DEF CON, and came out with a wicked case of conference cold that lasted sort of 2 days. But in the spirit of being healthy and in the spirit of Elon Musk's latest views on how we should do these sort of things.
Oh no.
Who's up for a spliff? Right.
Oh my gosh.
No, I'm kidding. This is a family show. There is nothing in there other than pure legal tobacco, which will only kill you if you use it as per the manufacturer's instructions. But what was Elon thinking? I mean, seriously.
So are we familiar with the Joe Rogan show as a group in general?
Yes.
Have we've seen this
Yes.
before? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so
Yes.
for people who don't know the Joe Rogan show, it's one dude who's in the MMA scene, Joe Rogan, who's also a quasi-comedian, who does
MMA is mixed martial arts. That's basically
from
two
News Radio
people.
back in the 1990s when he was basically just the bohonk that was brought on to be the muscular engineer type. And it sort of amazes me that he swerved into this
niche.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, he's mastered it, so kudos to him.
But his show has great reach. Like James Hetfield from Metallica went on after the latest album. Yeah. Every celebrity you've known's dropped by, and it's a long-form interview. Yeah. Now, what would happen if you took that format and put a kind of really under-stress tech executive with a history for drug use and crazy sayings? Well, what you can imagine happened. So...
Yeah, but I mean, 9% off the share price of the company initially, it bounced back slightly. Mm-hmm. The US military is now looking into this because as a federal contractor, he's not supposed to have anything to do with drugs. Yeah. I mean, Dwight, at the end of the day, was this mental breakdown? Was this just publicity seeking?
Well, if you watch the whole video, I don't think Elon necessarily was expecting it, but haven't there been tweets between his girlfriend and another musician about him getting stoned all the time? I seem to remember a story about that a couple of weeks ago.
When he was joking about taking the company private.
Yes, right, exactly. And so I think he's 420 friendly anyway, and he's not the guy actually working turning wrenches on the rocket. So I'm not sure exactly how that extends up. One of the things that's really fascinated me about the legalization of pot around the country is you have places where it's now legal, but you have businesses who will fire you if you do it. And this kind of dovetails into that a little bit because, what are Tesla's and SpaceX's rules about doing marijuana, even on your own time and certainly in public?
Yeah, there was a report of a woman who was fired from Tesla because she tested positive for marijuana, cannabis, and she was mad because Elon was out there smoking weed. Now, I don't have a problem with what you do in your own time, for sure, but I do think that it was a failure of crisis communications, too, in the middle of the struggles that Tesla has had in the last 12, 18, 24 months, to go through this level of distraction and stupidity into the mix.
Yeah.
Well, I guess the question is, the question I have is, how does Musk understand his relationship with his shareholders and his board of directors? Because it's one thing when it's your company and there are not people who have put their money into it and are relying on you to make the kind of decisions that will increase market valuation. But when you become a public company, you are essentially making a contract with shareholders that says, when I act as a representative of this company in the public space, everything I do in the interest of increasing value. And I don't know.
This doesn't increase value, does it?
He hasn't demonstrated. He hasn't demonstrated an awareness of that. He hasn't demonstrated an understanding that once your company is publicly traded, your relationship to both your intellectual property and your corporation is much different than when you own the whole thing the whole way down.
Well, also, he spends so much time complaining about short sellers going after his stock, and then to give them such blatant ammunition seems, quite frankly, a little bit bizarre. But
self-defeating, even. But this is the story of Elon in the last couple of years. I mean, he's done through his firms a lot of really great stuff. I still watch SpaceX launches because I'm a huge nerd.
No, me too. He's revolutionized that area.
That. The live video is fantastic. And the Model 3 launch has finally revved up. They're claiming to hit profitability this year. If he just said nothing, a lot of stuff would have gone away. Instead, Joe Rogan, a large blunt, and 1,000 million memes that were born from that moment. I mean, just unnecessary, and he needs better friends to tell him not to do this stuff.
Well, I also wonder if there's the fallacy of intelligence where the idea is if you're really smart in one area, you're smart in all areas.
The Germans do have a word for this. It means someone who is highly skilled in one area or a complete fool in others.
I'm going to Google what that is.
Please do.
It's definitely in there.
Because I wouldn't contest his innovation or his genius in a lot of ways. And in that interview, one of the things I really liked was how he nerded out over alternative energy sources.
Oh, yeah.
And the idea of breaking free of the fossil fuel economy. I mean, good for him for getting those ideas out to an audience that is not typically hearing those ideas. Like, good for him for that. And good for him for being smart about this stuff. But is he smart about how to be a CEO of a publicly traded company?
In that same interview, he also reiterated the idea that maybe we're all just living in a simulation. That came up again, and that was after the toke, I believe.
There's a philosophical term for that too, where and I forget what that is. I read about it recently, where there somebody like did an entire philosophical syllogism who's like, this is the only logical conclusion. And I was like, really?
Yeah, that's what Elon believes, and that can't be good for his shareholders either. He doesn't want shareholders. I mean, that's clear. He said he wanted to
really
take
like mess with him at a meeting and just have like a bunch of Mr. Smiths come in and sit down, like a bunch of Hugo Weavings lookalikes sitting in the audience, all just completely unamused. And simulation, this Elon.
Okay. I know that
simulation comes for you in this case, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
But he just needs to be reined in. I'm sorry, like flat out. I know he's rich. I know he's interesting, but you got to be a better manager than that. And you're screwing up your employees' net worth, not just yours. It's not just about you. And the same way that politics feels all Trump right now, all Carr feels Elon. Yeah. But there's thousands of people that work there that have 401ks and have, I'm sure RSUs.
Who are invested in this and they don't want to see it.
They just want to send their kids to college.
This is the conundrum of being a CEO is if you're doing it right, a lot of your time is actually spent looking at really big picture stuff and understanding the effects that you have on dozens of people, dozens of constituencies, each with their own priorities. And as a public-facing CEO, he doesn't demonstrate an understanding or knowledge of that.
He has the EQ of a 6-year-old. Yeah. Right.
So. Speaking of which, did you see Trump's tweet about Apple over the weekend?
No, I actually try and stay off social media on the weekends now. I do.
Just for the sake of sanity.
Actual mark of maturity.
That's
right. Yeah. I feel like this way I don't go into Monday. Oh God.
Yeah, I know. I took a couple of weeks, a couple of days off Twitter. But yes, he was saying basically Apple prices may increase because of the massive tariffs we will be imposing on China. But there's an easy solution. Will there be zero tax and indeed a tax incentive? Make your products in the United States instead of China. Start building new plants now. Exciting! Exclamation mark. MAGA.
So does he realize, well, of course, why am I asking that part? So does anyone here realize how long it takes to build any sort of fab plant, bring it online and hire for it?
Oh, well, no, it can be done in the twinkling of an eye, I'm sure.
So what are the economics of hiring American workers as opposed to Chinese workers? What are the shipping costs? What are the shipping relationships set up with frontline suppliers?
Well, the frontline suppliers are also all in China, so if you want to do a last minute...
and if you take a look, like one of the stories that I can't believe I'm going to have to say it this way. I began covering this back in like 2005, 2006. Was China China investing a great deal of infrastructure in mobile and mining in Africa, and it's paid off for them with smartphones tremendously because they've got locks on the supply chains.
Chinese investment into Africa has been a 25-year story now. It's been fantastic in terms of the scale of it.
So exactly how is Apple supposed to somehow like replicate all of that in a few weeks to prevent the price of iPhones?
It's completely impossible. I mean, the tweets, I'm going to try to be politically neutral-ish here because I know it's a show with a broad reach and we're not just talking amongst us four, but there's a lot that's wrong in that tweet and a lot that's kind of silly and it just cut off from the economic reality. I knew he was going to come up, so I pulled the famous tariff quote that everyone really loves to bring up as to why I think tariffs are dumb. So here's kind of the canonical, this is stupid. It goes, tariffs not only impose immense economic costs, but also fail to achieve their primary policy aims and foster political dysfunction along the way. And here we are kind of living through that moment, and everyone called this, and we're here anyways. It's fantastically frustrating that this is kind of settled economic theory, and instead, when I need to buy a new iPhone in a couple of months, I'm probably going to pay more for it, and I'm cross.
I'd like to see more manufacturing in the U.S. I would.
As would we all, but
I would like to see that. I'd actually like to see people who work in manufacturing making a living wage in whatever country they're working in. I'd like to see humane conditions, and I'd like to see a diverse economic base in America. I think it's good for us, but I don't think that ignoring what is in favor of trying to deflect the blame for a policy that you've put into place yourself, which benefits no American. I can understand totally. I mean, Dwight. Texas used to be a real hub when it came to manufacturing, particularly Houston. So do you see this coming back? It seems somewhat difficult.
Well, Apple has already said it's going to open some factories. I think in the U.S. Isn't there like a Wisconsin factory that's coming online, but it can't be done immediately, and it just shows a complete lack of understanding for how manufacturing works by the president. And I think that here, Houston is a good example. It used to be, for example, Compaq, when it was based here, built everything that they did here in Houston. And slowly they farmed it out overseas. And by the time HP bought them, and then when HP took it over, it was pretty much all overseas. So this happened over a period of years and years. It's not something that could come back instantly, and it's not something that certainly is going to keep Alex's iPhone cheaper next week.
Yeah, sad times for me and my checking account, but also Nilay Patel from The Verge, who I'm sure we all know, was tweeting about this a little bit, and he said, reminder that Steve Jobs told Obama that there weren't enough trained engineers in the U.S. to build the iPhone here, and recommended opening up immigration to allow for it, and I can pull some sites on that if we need them. But I mean, we don't have the talent geared up for this. We don't have the infrastructure in place for it. The global supply chains wouldn't sync up that way, and a bunch of other reasons. But of course, POTUS, 45.
Again, when you are CEO, you really have to be able to look at a huge picture and understand all of the different working parts and all of the constituencies in place. And
when you're a competent business person,
I think one of the things that we're seeing actually with the tariff policy, because we're all becoming tariff experts, obviously, what we're talking about is.
Welcome to Economic Twit. This week in tariffs.
No, I think what we're seeing now is a lot of us are finally beginning to understand that it's not, commerce isn't a straight channel from, someone made the widget, now I can buy the widget. There are so many different companies and steps along the way. And we are now beginning to understand how this affects us as tech reporters and tech consumers. I'm also in the market for an iPhone.
Oh, there you go. Well,
and
maybe we can split one.
I'm super excited.
Well, you may be able to check out the new ones on September the 12th. The invites have gone out. Of course, the register is blacklisted as ever. Are you going, Alex? Or?
No, Apple's emailed me back one time in my entire career of writing.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
So I cover B2B for a living, so I'm never on the list. But I watch it just to see if. Honestly, I feel like with Apple, it's one of those brands where you can see how it's going to affect the enterprise in 18 to 24 months as people bring the technology into their company and start making it bog standard. So I watch it for that reason. To see.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I was speaking to a journalist who is going, and apparently the list of things that you can and cannot do during the presentation is really quite strict. You're only allowed to take photos from a certain angle, from a certain position. It all looks very sort of tightly controlled. But are we expecting anything really revolutionary from this?
I hope they have stand breaks every 15 minutes so everybody with the Apple Watch can stand up.
Oh my God. That would be staying very on brand, I feel.
Tim Cook comes out, all right, everybody, let's do a stretch. I want you to reach into your core.
Well, I mean, apparently it's quite bizarre at Apple headquarters because at 10 minutes to the hour, about half the staff will stand up and start wandering around because their watch has just told them to.
Yeah, no, totally.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
in this one, almost everything about it that, I mean, as far as we know, has been leaked. We even had the 9 to 5 Mac images that were leaked last week, and so we kind of know a lot about this already. There probably will be some surprises. One of the interesting things I think that's coming out of this, if we do have these 3 iPhones, these 3 different size iPhone 10 designs, this will be the first time since the iPhone was released that you will not be able to buy a new iPhone with a home button. The home button essentially is dead on new iPhones. You'll probably be able to buy a 7 or 8 or some of the older iPhones, but this is basically it. It's the death of the home button. And for people who like them and still want them, they're going to have to go backwards as opposed to forwards.
Or just get off the platform altogether and go to Android.
Or get off the platform altogether.
I feel like this is the headphone jack talk all over again.
Oh. I need to apologize actually about that. I think I was on Twit when the whole jokes about courage were made. Like, it's courage, not how that's what we did. We all laughed, and I was very rude. And I probably got some tweets about it because I tend to get a couple of tweets from Twit fans who are like, "You're an idiot," but it's okay.
We all get those.
I did buy AirPods a while ago now, and I love them so much. I bought some for my fiance. I love AirPods. They're amazing. I do not miss my headphone jack whatsoever. I never use a dongle. Apple was right. I was wrong. And I will buy another set the moment they launch version 2 of them.
Just get out. I'm sorry.
I know.
The 3.5 mil jack is there's no reason whatsoever to get rid of it. It's perfect. From an engineering standpoint, it does the job. It doesn't take up that much space. I could rant about this for absolutely hours.
Coke, Pepsi.
Okay, how do our other 2 panelists feel about this?
I have been using Bluetooth for a long time before they dropped that out. I very seldom used wired headphones anymore, and so it didn't bother me. But I think Apple has a history of making the right move and dropping technology, and I think that was it. And you kind of seen it in a bunch of other phones that have now been released without headphone jacks. I think it's, and the other thing that's interesting is that wireless headphones, Bluetooth headphones, have gotten better since this happened. The market has responded by making the sound better and making the quality of the product better. And so it actually has helped that as well. I think it was a brilliant move. Sorry, Ian.
Please tell me I'm not alone in this.
I'm honestly just here for any headset that makes me look like Janet Jackson from Rhythm Nation. I mean, that is the apex of cool headset technology as far as I'm concerned. And if it's the earbuds, let me do it.
But this week, aside from new iPhones, I think we're all hoping for a new Mac Mini.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of been the go-to complaint from us kind of as a group of people forever. So I'm really pulling for that. Also, there's dark mode in OS 10, I think, is coming out, in OS 10.12 or something.
Yeah.
I'd like to see some news on where they're going on the laptops, because that's just been such a disappointment over the last couple of years, and it's driving users away on an active basis. But I don't think we are going to hear. Sorry?
It's good for Microsoft. I mean, finally.
Well, yeah, we've got
Surface.
It's good for Lenovo.
Surface is kind of cool, and Apple laptops aren't good. 2018 is a weird year.
I know. We've got a Surface event coming
Yoga.
out.
The Lenovo Yoga. If you take a look, one of the things I love about it.
Oh, this is the 2-in-1.
Yeah, the keyboard snaps on or snaps off as you need it to. It's just it's very elegant. I've had a chance to get hands on with them, and they feel so nice. And I think one of the things Apple has done right is it's kind of predicted a post-PC consumer tech environment, and that's why they've done a really great job with, say, their phones. They're making the incursion into smart home, the iPad, and especially the ginormous iPad. They're doing a great job there.
But they do seem to have taken their eye off the ball when it comes to the laptops.
I think they might be leaving money on the table, but...
And Microsoft has come... I mean, we've got a Surface event coming up in first or second week in October.
Yep.
And
October 2nd is the Surface event.
Yeah, right. I mean, I've been using a Surface for years. It's not a great travel laptop, because if you're a short ass like me, then you can't balance that kickstand on your knees on the train. But at the same time, if you're looking for sort of high-end, expensive kit like the Air, Surface is good.
I mean, I get the feeling that when Apple runs the numbers, they think they probably make money more easily with the mobile ecosystem they've set up and with the services that they're doubling down on now.
Yeah.
And so perhaps laptops and other computers are things that will continue to make money for them, but they'll be more of a legacy business. To draw a parallel, perhaps it's the same way where if you look at Microsoft's business strategy, their Windows division still makes the bulk of their money, but year over year, the growth in that division has gone down fairly steadily as the growth in their other divisions has gone up, and it's pretty evident that they're like, we're writing this business out, we're putting our resources and building our customer opportunities in other areas. So maybe that's what Apple's doing. I mean, we all obviously love the Apple computers. I would happily buy another.
Is that a Chromebook Pixel you're using?
This is the original Chromebook Pixel.
I got
you could fry bacon on this baby when I've been using it for more than 3 hours.
You got singed fingers after 15 words.
Also,
but I don't think Apple's going to be a laptop company for much longer. And I will be curious to see how longtime Apple customers feel about that compared to people who came online and came of age in a much different competing environment.
Can I be wrong about one more thing about Apple before we move on to the Apple Watch?
By all means.
Okay, so I broke, this is a 2013 MacBook Pro that I have from work, and I broke the keyboard because I typed too hard and I just broke it.
It's also an Apple keyboard, let's face it. The quality's not great.
Right, but this is the non-new version that breaks all the time. Anyways, so this was sent into Apple to be fixed, and I was given a brand new 15-inch MacBook Pro with the touch bar and the new keyboard that everyone hates. I love the touch bar. I thought it was fantastic. I was the only person in the history of the world to like it, but I thought it was just great.
I was going to say, you're a unicorn.
I feel like finally time has come when I'm the Apple fanboy in the room. It's the first time ever, but I really liked it. And
does it feel dirty?
It does. It feels like I gave up something. Yes, it feels like I've lost my integrity.
Yeah. So
the touch bar is great if you want to use photo editing and video editing things. Be able to move your finger across the screen, when you're doing sizing and doing color. It's great. My wife has one and she likes it, and when I can get it out of her fingers, I use it. And that the touch bar for certain things is really nice. If you don't ever do any of that, then for a lot of times it's kind of pointless. But for those kinds of users, it's actually good in a professional way.
So you know what I've noticed when I move between my iPad and my laptop computers is I will find myself swiping across my screen because I'm just so used to that. Because I have a keyboard for my iPad, and I'll switch between the two back and forth depending on what I'm doing. And on my iPad, I can, of course, switch between touching on the screen to typing. And the muscle memory carries over. And I'm just wondering, and this might be how, maybe this is how Apple blows the lid off of the laptop category at some point, is they figure out a way to incorporate touch. Yeah. Maybe there's a glove coming that we don't know about or something like that, because people at this point have gotten to where swiping and gesturing is as much a part of a user interface as a mouse.
It is remarkable when you go back after being with a touch laptop for so long, going to another one and just going, oh, for goodness sake. Yeah. Oh, right.
It feels like you're using an anachronism. And my oldest nephews are like 11 and 8 now, and they've grown up only kind of in the smartphone era, effectively. Oh, yeah. And they, when they were younger, would try to touch my laptop screen when they were like 5 and 2, because they thought that's how you touch a computer. It's broken, Uncle Alex. Well, no, it just doesn't do that. Here's a question, though. Does Apple create a hybrid OS X, iOS operating system, or do they stay distinct? Because if they stay distinct, I don't see touch ever going to the laptop.
I think they're gonna eventually have one.
I think they're going to have to.
Windows 8 from Apple. Great. Yeah. Everyone's going to love that.
Well, I mean, it'll go in the same way that Chrome OS went, in that you can, with the last couple of iterations of Chrome OS, you can now run Android apps in it. The first time you could run Android apps very badly in it because no one would resize their apps for the screen. But I think that's the way they've got to go.
Well, there's Windows Universal Window Platform now, which is what they're trying to do, is encourage the idea, develop once, deploy across a mobile device or a desktop.
They've been on that since the Terry Myerson era of the Windows team.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, right, we're going to break for a quick word from our sponsors that make this podcast available, but we'll be back shortly with the other big news of the week, which was the Senate hearings into technology companies. But here's Leo.
Hi, Ian. Hi, gang. If you don't mind, I've come back. I'm a ghost, back from vacation, just for a moment to tell you about the new Ring security system. I just got mine, Ring's Alarm Security Kit. By the way, I know people know I'm out of the house, right? I'm on vacation. You might want to think twice about popping in. I got the Ring Alarm Security Kit in place, along with my Ring doorbell and my Ring spotlight cams. If you do visit the LaPorte abode during my vacation, you will be smile. You'll be on camera. And, the police will be right there just to escort you out. You've heard of Ring. We've talked about the Ring video doorbell for ages. They're the ones who reinvented the doorbell to let you answer it with your phone, and I love it. I use it. They've also now reinvented the home alarm system. So you probably know this. The old school alarm companies make their money on the big, high monthly cost for monitoring. And they know that they make their money because they tie you into like 2- and 3-year contracts, and they charge through the nose by the month. So Ring, just like they've disrupted the doorbell industry and the spotlight industry, they're disrupting the security industry with the Ring Alarm. This is one kit. This is the basic kit, but you can get all sorts of sensors for all kinds of situations. They're easy to install. You build a system that's just right for you, with the sensors on the doors and the windows, the motion sensors, the keypad, the siren, and, of course, the 24-hour monitoring, and no long-term contracts. You can build a system just right for you and have 24/7 professional monitoring. Get ready for this. They only charge $10 a month for the monitoring. $10! Now, you got a base station, you got a keypad, you got a contact sensor, you got a motion detector, you got a range extender, there's all sorts of those. You pick the ones you want, you put them in, you install them. $10 a month, no long-term contracts. This is the best, the smartest way to protect your entire home. The Ring Alarm Security Kit. Get it at ring.com and retail stores throughout the country. R-I-N-G, ring.com/twit. Learn how you can get a whole home security. Protect your entire home for only $10 a month. Ring.com/twit. They've done it again. Thank you, Ring, for your support of This Week in Tech.
Hi, and welcome back. Okay, now, of course, the week started off fairly slowly with Labor Day weekend and everyone taking the Monday off, particularly in the halls of government. But then we were back with a bang, where you had Jack Dorsey from Twitter, Sarah Sandberg leaning into Congress for her talks, and Google not showing up at all. So the chocolate factory didn't come along. Why do you think that was?
they wanted to have the political stunt played on them.
Mm-hmm.
They set out a chair for them, gave them a little name tag, and then no one sat down. It was a bit of kind of political theater, but it was effective. I mean, everyone took a picture of the empty Google chair and political shamed Sundar, and I guess everyone else from the Google family.
Yeah.
Effective.
Google has a really testy. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Do it.
I was going to say, I think Google gave it what it deserved. It was political theater. It was conservatives kind of whining about not being treated fairly by a business. It was essentially it was shaming is what it was, and it was a joke. And I think that Google probably played it exactly as it should have been.
I like the testy Google statement where they were like, over the last 18 months, we've met with dozens of committee members and briefed major congressional committees numerous times on our work to prevent foreign interference in U.S. elections. And the reason I like how they start off with the timeline is they imply that they were on this before Congress was concerned about it. And then they go on to continue that their chief legal officer is going to be in Washington, D.C. on September 5th. So they're welcome to meet with him then.
But do you think this was in any way related to
and they
Trump's...
also say, we informed the Senate committee that this was happening in July, and we had understood this was okay with us. So again, their written response basically lobs several balls back over the net to Congress with, all right, your move.
This isn't +1 -1 though. I think they should have shown up and done well. I think when you look at the reviews, I mean, yeah, is it stupid? Yes. Is it useful? No. But you got to play the game somewhat because tech has had a history of not being as regulated as it could be. And we're seeing a lot of discussion about regulation right now, and I think it was a tactical error, especially when you look at the different reactions that Dorsey got compared to the Facebook executive, because he was less scripted than she was, and that was better received. And I think that showing up there and putting a human face to the company, which is why they didn't send Zuck, of course, because he's a robot, to at least try to send a human...
still only a rumor.
I'm sorry, it's unconfirmed per the register. I think you could have done yourself some favors there, and instead they opened themselves up to an obvious political attack. No one read that statement, except us. Everyone just saw the empty pictures of the empty desk, and I don't think they even got a moral victory here. I agree they're right, but this is politics, and that doesn't matter.
But bear in mind
what I do think is interesting about this is the hearing that finally got Alex Jones kicked off Twitter. You know?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I mean, part of me thinks you should allow him to say, equal platforms for all and the rest of it. On the other hand, when you look at the families of the Sandy Hook victims who've been hounded out of their homes, it's ethically it's a really tricky issue. So I'm not sure where we're going on that. I feel like it was
lose-lose for Twitter in that way because they did ban Jones, which had been a flashpoint and had actually provided a rallying point for people who have basically become professional boycotters. And by the way, I think the boycott is a very effective tool for raising awareness. I'm never clear on how it works in the bottom line.
Although you've got to say Nike have really hit it out the box this week.
Oh my God, we can get that in a minute. But at the same time, it's notable that Alex Jones only got banned after he went after the CEO of Twitter. And as you pointed out, the bereaved parents of children have been harassed. He was allowed to harass the bereaved parents of children without consequence for years. And so I feel like that's kind of a bad look for Twitter because it's, all users are equal, but some users are more equal than others. And since they've been fighting that kind of imagery all year long, this just sort of extends the streak.
I mean, Dwight, how did this play down in Texas as a true red state, although I gather Ted Cruz is in a bit of trouble at the moment?
Yes. Well, Alex Jones is from Austin, and he is until he kind of surfaced in a higher profile in the last few years, he was considered basically something of a joke. You may remember a series of military exercises down here that was codenamed Jade Helm.
Oh yes, people were panicking about that.
Yes, which Alex Jones was at the root of. He was saying that they were going to round people up and put them in abandoned Walmart buildings, and that was kind of what the real thing about this was. And people had always laughed at Alex Jones, but in this case, the governor of Texas said, well, maybe we should investigate what Jade Helm is doing, and elevated it to a higher level. And then that, along with the Sandy Hook thing, kind of kicked him into a national figurehead, which he should never have been because he's a crank.
Well, the Jade Helm stuff happened during the Obama administration, right? That was the fear among the fringe right, if you will, that it was somehow government takeover. Okay, yeah, but it was
remember when they used to be the fringe right?
Yeah, and then they became the alt-right, then they became the right. Sorry, I didn't actually mean that. That was slightly unfair. Paul Ryan can still be your daddy. It's okay. Thinking about the Alex Jones.
What is my Apple Watch doing now?
on the Alex Jones thing, though, I've struggled with this a bit because I'm a big fan of free speech. I think anyone I was a philosophy major in college. I spent a lot of time reading about this. And then I discovered that Twitter is a private company. It's their own platform. And if you're a jerk, they can tell you to leave. Any restaurant, so even any Uber can just be like, you're a jerk, go away. And in this case, you know what? Maybe the rule should be if we don't like you a whole bunch, you're gone. And then that's a great policy because you can never run foul of it if you're Twitter.
Yeah. Look, if you want to express yourself, that's great, but understand there are going to be consequences for it.
This
is not consequence.
It's something I know. It's something that I found as a foreigner being over here. You always hear about, it's my First Amendment right to express.
That's only
from the government saying that you can't say that. You can still say it, but it doesn't mean we've got to A, take you seriously, and B, think you're not a wanker.
Yeah.
So
Twitter doesn't shadow ban.
Also, you have the right to have an opinion. Other people have the right to think your opinion is ridiculous, and this is something that seems to get lost in the shuffle too. Is having the right to have an opinion does not mean you have the right to have your opinion received uncritically.
Yes, absolutely.
And deplatforming off Twitter has been incredibly effective. And I hate to say the following name out loud because I'm pretty sure it's going to get me in trouble somewhere. But
or summon him in the studio.
Exactly. Well, yeah, but Milo Yiannopoulos, an export from the UK, actually.
I sincerely apologize. He's a complete waste of flesh and organs and an oxygen thief to boot.
I did once smoke a cigarette with him. He smokes menthols, if I recall correctly. So
for goodness sake, what is he, 12?
Yeah. That was a while ago. That was an unnecessary aside. When he was deplatformed from Twitter, essentially his profile fell apart. It was just completely gone away. So I wonder if Twitter does kind of occupy this critical part in our media landscape, because everyone who's in media is on Twitter, that if you deplatform someone off of Twitter itself, it's more effective than taking them off Facebook, for example, or some other social network. It's probably maybe a bit more than others.
It's interesting. I was speaking to some hackers at DEF CON, and they were from the socialist hacking group, and they were saying that some of their members have been kicked off in the same way. And it was, this is terrible, we can't possibly allow this. And then I checked out the archives of their Twitter feeds, and it's kind of like, I'd probably kick you off for that as well, to be honest. But I mean,
as someone who has moderated content before, I have managed I have managed the Houston Chronicles comment section.
Did they give you combat pay? They should have given you combat pay.
You need a rhino hide for that kind of job.
Yeah,
it is not easy, but. The thing is it's often not what you say, but how you say it that gets you in trouble. A lot of people can say things that are make other people angry and are offensive, but if you don't couch it in a way that's threatening, if you state it as an idea that you want to discuss, if you're smart about it and don't do it with anger, you probably can stay on a platform like Twitter. But it's when you become abusive, when you threaten people, when you threaten violence, they have every right in the world to kick you off their platform. It is their platform. They want to create a specific kind of community with a specific kind of vibe and feeling. And if you're messing that up, you're out of there. And Twitter, the problem with Twitter and the way they handled Alex Jones before is that they were kind of feeling guilty about it. Jack Dorsey wanted to show, hey, we're being fair, but sometimes you can't be fair in those circumstances and then still be fair to everybody else on your system. And you have to make the hard decision. And they finally did it. It is a shame that it took Jack Dorsey getting harassed to get Alex Jones out of there. Yes. And Apple removed his app too that same week as well. So he has a much smaller audience.
Well, the new talking point in response to all this among certain elements of the right, I think that's a polite way of saying it, is that Twitter and Facebook should be treated as utilities. And
Steve Bannon was saying something about this. They should be nationalized, which coming from him is quite a volte-face.
So what I was going to say is I can't believe I'm going to say this. There is actually a legitimate discussion to be had about where and when people have the right to a public space. For example, there have been stories about people kicked out of shopping malls for trying to hold events there, where the shopping mall management was like, no, you can't have an event here because this is a private property. We know we position ourselves as a community space, but we're not. We're actually a business, and only some types of activities are are here.
Yeah.
So I don't think it hurts to have a discussion about what constitutes a public space, especially when so much of our public dialogue is shifting to these companies. But at the same time, if you're going to treat social media companies like utilities, like why are you not actually starting with telecom and making broadband a utility and wiring the U.S.?
Like
I would argue
telcos have to make a huge amount of money.
I would argue
net
that's
neutrality
a more
destruction is
urgent
the way
priority
to do
than
it.
making sure that Steve Bannon can get unfettered access to Twitter or whatever. But
yeah.
This goes back to what the point I was trying and maybe not doing a great job of making earlier about Google showing up, because I think Dwight's right that it was all political theater and stupid stunt. Yeah. But I mean, you don't want to give any fodder to the argument that you need to be heavily regulated from the government on down, because the government will not do a good job of it. And the irony here is that this is the argument that political conservatives in America have traditionally made in opposition to government influence in private business and private enterprise. Remember the whole, they pick winners and losers as an anti-argument to government influence? This is the opposite of that. It's advocacy in favor of it to correct a perceived wrong, shadow banning, that isn't even happening per the companies themselves. Yeah. So we've reached a kind of the peak of Mount Stupid. And for everyone who has
there's the title for the show.
Brain cells to rub together.
Yes.
This stuff is infuriating. So we're explaining the same stuff, tariffs, the same ideas, free speech, where it applies, and the same idea of private companies again and again and again to an audience that remixes them in the wrong way each time and then claims political grievance. It makes me want to tear out my last 5 hairs because I'm going kind of bald.
It's an effort to preserve power. Let's rig the system in our favor so long as we're in charge.
It's the gerrymandering of tech.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, speaking on that thing, we also had the hearings for the next Supreme Court justice in Washington.
Oh yeah.
And Kavanaugh's testimony was a masterful account of weasel words to avoid actually answering questions. But then emails leaked out that he'd done from 10 years before, 5 years before, that actually showed him, well, lying would possibly be too strong, but at least being economical with the truth when it came to his testimony for the actual congressional hearings. It's like, bearing in mind, I mean, this guy's, he's fairly young, he's no doubt fairly healthy, he's going to be running things for he's going to be on the court for the next 40 years. Given some of these emails about his views towards online surveillance, targeting, that sort of thing, certainly net neutrality, is this something, I mean, is he going to get in? I'm not an American person, but I mean, does it look like this could be our next Supreme Court justice?
Yes.
I mean, it's 99% chance, right?
Yeah. It's unfortunately, yes. Because I think they've got the woman from Maine who's for
Sarah. Yeah.
They've got Collins on lock, I think.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, it's speaking of political theater, what Cory Booker did when he was like, I'm just releasing these. Feel free, do what you want with them. That was a nice bit of political theater this week.
Yeah,
and
there was a lot of acts of that particular theater.
Yeah, and it's too bad it's come to that, as opposed to having 100,000 different documents which should have been open to the public. And
they only released the documents, I think, the day before the hearing.
42,000, like an hour before or something.
Yeah.
No, it was.
What do we think about Tim Wu's idea that Facebook should be broken up? Because Tim Wu was big in the net neutrality discussion that we mentioned just a minute ago, but with broadband and utilities. This smacks to me of Microsoft in the 90s. And
yeah, but what happened to Microsoft in the 90s in the US? Pretty much they got away with it.
Yeah.
It took a massive
them down,
EU
they
fine.
came back more powerful than ever before. So
I mean,
you guys were reporting before I was. So I'm deferring here.
Well, okay. I mean, certainly it was being talked about, but it was the EU which actually brought the fines and forced Microsoft to disengage the browser.
Yeah.
The US were kind of like, well, it's kind of naughty, but you know what? We're just,
it's not that naughty.
Yeah. Just try and sort it out. But I just don't see how it would work. I mean, legally,
how would you break it up? Like, how would you divide
take Instagram as a separate company?
Oh, I mean, I think there's 3 companies there.
Yeah,
I mean,
WhatsApp,
there's
Instagram,
exactly. There's 3 properties. Facebook is essentially the whale of the group in the gambling terminology, and that's a big cash flow that will eventually decline. Instagram is a rising star, breaking out into television and the new e-commerce app that Casey Newton wrote about for The Verge.
Yeah,
and WhatsApp is the international multilingual power play that exists from India all the way back to Pittsburgh. Yeah. So there's 3 companies there inside of one house, and
WhatsApp is also the growth engine right now. So I think Facebook would fight it mostly because Instagram and WhatsApp are where the future of the revenue is going.
Yeah, and Facebook has a lot more power than any regulator does. So they're not going to get broken up. But the idea is fascinating because once again, this is coming up. Are these companies too big? Is Amazon a monopoly? It's not. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But this is a conversation, again, back to the idea of people being stupid, that we're going to have for a long time, I think.
I think so. I mean, Dwight, what's your view on this? Because I mean, it's Yeah, I mean, you've been around in the business, I think, probably longer than any of us. You've seen them. We've seen this with Microsoft. We've seen with calls. I mean, hell, there was rumors that Microsoft was just keeping Apple afloat just so it could avoid antitrust action back in the late 90s.
Yes, that's true. So I think one of the things I think is that, yes, it owns WhatsApp and Instagram, and there's a little bit of cross-play between Facebook and Instagram in some of its products, but I don't necessarily see the same thing that was happening with Microsoft, where Microsoft was using the presence of its browser to keep to keep competing browsers ineffective and off of internet and off of Windows. I think it owns all three companies, but they're fairly distinct. In fact, if you talk to a lot of Instagram users, they're not even aware that Facebook owns Instagram. And so I'm not necessarily sure that they're leveraging one to do the other. The one thing that they have done is they purchased these companies smartly. They knew that these companies were growth companies and that they would dominate their space if they had not already been doing so at the time. And so I think they have been smart in that sense, but I don't see them leveraging one thing to keep competitors away. They're just there and they're just doing very well.
It's kind of like the old Cisco model whereby you buy up the competition as it emerges. I mean, I can remember thinking the price they paid for Instagram at the time was insane, but
it's about $1 billion back before that was a thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then WhatsApp, the price was really insane.
$19 billion.
They have made a profit out of both, and a hefty one as well.
They've done incredibly well.
The only caveat to my comment that one is not leveraging the other is that they clearly have been predatory in terms of features. So, I think you can really argue that Snapchat has been wounded by the features that have been added to Instagram, and that some of which are now available in Facebook itself. So in that sense, I think you can look at it like that. But I haven't read Wu's piece. I'm not sure what he argues in terms of why they should be broken up. But I think that probably it's not at all yet on the level that Microsoft and Internet Explorer was in the 90s.
The crux of the piece, what he's looking at now, is he's explaining the idea that the law should prioritize competition. And that said, can you plausibly make the case that Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp have eliminated competition?
I think if you look at the pitiful amount of numbers people using Google Plus, that would certainly be a
or you could look at Snapchat's or Snap's stock price as another indicator of this. I think the answer is not yet.
I thought the Snapchat stock price was done in by Kylie Jenner. I didn't think
I keep
Facebook
forgetting
had much to do with it.
Maybe it was Elon Musk this time.
It's a safe bet these days.
It is kind of who to blame. Elon. The reason why I wanted to cite this is that Tim Wu is a very important public intellectual in the tech policy space. And so to see him use The Verge, which is a big platform to make this point, is a strong statement, and one that we should keep in mind I know we all like gadgets and gizmos and kind of like the cool bits of tech, but this political stuff really impacts the flow of who builds stuff and what you get to use. Now, it's a bit before all that stuff comes out, but it still really matters.
Well, at the end of the article, Hal Singer notes that we actually have a better antitrust case against Amazon because they're arguing that companies like Zappos and Diapers.com would not have had to sell themselves to Amazon if they felt that the market was still going to work in their favor, or if they felt that the competition was still possible.
Amazing, though, Walmart's huge e-commerce push, buying things like Jet.com, hiring marketers, and so forth, is creating the Apple to Microsoft in the 90s for Amazon by creating a second player in the e-com space that they can cite as a theoretical or at least putative competitor. But I think we all know that Amazon has about half the U.S. e-com market, so it's
their
leading.
Market penetration is pretty heavily weighted towards upper income deciles. And so what you're looking at is Walmart. They could probably comfortably coexist with Walmart penetrating from solid middle class on down and Amazon penetrating from solid middle class on up.
Quibbling.
The point is, though, neither one of them is going to want that. They're going
I was about to say, Amazon sharing just doesn't sound like a thing that actually happens in corporate culture.
No, I get the feeling that Jeff Bezos was either an only child or one who didn't really get that whole sharing thing.
I feel like this show is going to get at least one of us in trouble somehow.
How is he going to react when he gets to space and discovers there are other species?
Well, he'll sell them stuff. There's still that wonderful shot, though.
He'll sell them stuff. Exactly.
There's that wonderful shot of him in sort of 1998 with the sort of floppy-haired guy. It's just like, I want to sell books online, and then that ripped shot of him from last year like this. I'm going to sell whatever the FI1.
It's like Linda Hamilton in the Terminator 2, where you're like, whoa, what happened to you?
This is what $1 billion worth of like fitness and like pre-made. Yeah, like you can hire a chef, you can look like that.
Or we're going to discover in like 3 or 4 years that he's actually had like a genetic engineering startup on the side, and he's made himself the first test subject. And
maybe he replaced himself with a robot like Mark.
I thought Larry Ellison had beaten everyone to the punch.
No, Larry
on
Ellison's
that.
the devil in a human suit.
I thought Larry Ellison was sailing the high seas with his yachts and his catamarans.
And cheating at the America's Cup. All right, I'm going to stop talking smack for 5 minutes.
Just a random tech
5 whole minutes of being played.
Okay, right. Seems like a good idea to take a break and speak to some of the sponsors that make this podcast possible. So here's Leo to tell you what it's all about.
Our show today brought to you by Rocket Mortgage from Quicken Loans. Let's talk about buying a house for a minute. Because of rising interest rates, this is something new in the market, right? There's a lot of unpredictability when it comes to buying that new home. It's causing a lot of anxiety with people. Well, the good people at Quicken Loans know that. And because they're very customer-centric, they're focused on your experience, they're doing something about it. They call it the power buying process. And here's how it works. Quicken Loans will verify your income, assets, and credit in less than 24 hours, and they'll give you verified approval. And that means now you have the strength of a cash buyer. You are in like Flynn, man. You can go there with that letter, give it to the seller's realtor, and they'll put you right at the top of the list because you're good for it. You've got verified approval. And once you're verified, this is how they take the anxiety out of home shopping. You qualify for their all-new exclusive Rate Shield approval. They'll lock up your rate for up to 90 days while you shop. If rates go up, your rate stays the same. If rates go down, your rate drops. But either way, you win. It's exactly what you'd expect from America's #1 mortgage lender. The biggest, the best. Quicken Loans and Rocket Mortgage. You get started right now. Go to rocketmortgage.com/twit2. Get that Rate Shield approval. It's only valid on certain 30-year purchase transactions. Additional conditions or exclusions may apply based on Quicken Loans data in comparison to public data records. Quicken Loans is an equal housing lender licensed in all 50 states at MLSConsumerAccess.org, number 3030. Here's all you need to remember. rocketmortgage.com/twit2. rocketmortgage.com/twit and the number 2. We thank Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans for assembling this fine panel today. Now I send you back to Ian Thompson. Ian?
A fine panel. That's very nice of you indeed, Leo. Right, as I say, we have the panel here and ready to go. And the final bit of news out from Washington came late in the week, but it was the news that apparently the U.S. intelligence services have identified one of the North Korean hackers accused of not only hacking Sony Pictures, but also the WannaCry ransomware outbreak, the $81 million heist against a Bangladeshi bank, and many, many more computer crimes. Now, Park Yin-yok, I've probably pronounced that wrong, will probably not be leaving the borders of North Korea, or as best Korea, as I understand they call themselves, without the slightest hint of irony. I mean, do statements like this actually help? Because this guy is never leaving Korea now. We're never probably going to get our hands on him. I mean,
I think the fact that we can chase down who it was individually shows that we can see through things, and so maybe people will be less incentivized to try things they might have thought they could get away with, when in fact we know exactly what's going on.
So the idea is that by putting out the wanted poster, what the government is doing is sending a message saying, we'll figure out who you are. Yeah. And if we can get to you, we will.
And during our next round of sanctions talk, we're going to have another set of things to talk about.
Yeah.
I mean, these sort of hacking incidents, whenever they happen, the news flares up around them. Yeah. Everyone talks about them. And WannaCry was an enormous deal for about 12 minutes, I felt like.
Well, no, I mean, it very nearly shut down huge chunks of the British National Health Service.
Yeah.
It was only thanks to Marcus Hutchins and a couple of other people. We actually stopped it in his tracks. But yeah, it was a huge deal.
And then it wasn't. All of a sudden. Like, I feel like once we get it under control and we send in the text to actually fix the things, everyone else goes, aha, and the news is on.
Yeah.
It's too bad.
I think, though, people forget, because like you pointed out, it very nearly brought down health services. Most computing environments are heterogeneous, where you'll have machines that are 10 to 12 years old, all the way to machines that are 10 to 12 days old. And what hackers can do is they can exploit this, because you're not going to have one security protocol that one size fits all. And it can have terrible results. I mean, imagine if they had gotten to the point where they were shutting down power or erasing medical records for like a pediatric ICU or something like that.
Yeah.
Just because they could. And when, I know the way we covered it was, there's a patch, here's what you can do, blah, blah, blah. But what I would like to see are follow-ups where you talk to the companies that got affected and how many man-hours of work did you lose? What was the bottom line? What people were affected by these systems being down? And so something like this, where they're like, look, we've identified people who can do this kind of damage, and we will find you.
And we will talk to you very sternly through a press release.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they're talking
Dwight,
to you very sternly through a press release, because we haven't gotten to the point where we have like a Mossad-like apparatus in place to take you from the country
That's
you're in.
a very dangerous road to go down.
Exactly, that's
is Israeli
the point.
special forces, and they will come in, they will steal you.
Yes.
And Dwight, what were you saying?
And they're fantastic.
Dwight, I mean, where do you stand on this? Because it's obviously a very contentious
I'm not
topic, but do you think it
advocating for that,
helps?
but I'm just saying.
I think that it does say, yeah, we will find you. That's about as far as it goes. Now they have to find them. If they arrest them and catch them, that will be the ultimate. But I liked the list of stories that we should have been doing afterwards. Lisa came up with, and one of them should also be, how have things changed? Because I would suspect that in a lot of cases, not very much.
No, this is it. I mean, Bruce Schneier, obviously famous security guru, has a new book out called "Click Here to Kill Everyone,"
That's a great
and
title.
it's basically looking at how this is going to impact, because we've got millions of devices, they're unsecured, they're unpatchable, and no one's really got an incentive to patch them, because what you need is, because if you're a manufacturer, that costs time and money, and you're really just about selling the devices, moving on and going to the next one. And if you're a government, then it's quite handy to have some things like this around. But once this goes mega, I mean, he calls it Internet Plus.
There are industries who use industry-specific software. And I've read of use cases where there are people who are still running Macintosh computers from the 1990s because the software developer never made an OS X version of their software.
Wow.
And so, and granted, nobody is busy trying to break into your Performa from 1995. Like, that's not happening. But
this was one of the reasons WannaCry was because people were still using XP and paying Microsoft for the update.
Right.
in part because if you are a school system or a local government or a community hospital, you don't have the IT budget to continue the kind of tech churn that an operating system vendor is going to expect you to have, or even that a software maker is going to expect you to have. And even when you upgrade, it might be one thing for like, oh, good news, our school system is finally moving up to Windows 10. But if the software that you use to log attendance and student grades only runs on, Windows XP or Windows 8, then you're heavily disincentivized because the whole point to upgrading your system is gone. It's not going to help. And you're like, well, I will take my chance with the odd virus, or I can completely shut down a school system, go back to the school board, ask for another $10 million, make the case, and tell them we're worried that some kid with a keyboard might bring us down in a couple of years.
Although it seems that if you go to most school boards in the US and ask for $10 million, after they've passed out laughing, then,
exactly.
Then they punch you.
But this is the reality of a lot of tech ecosystems in the US is, again, you're not going through a whole lot of, you don't have infinite IT budget, and if you are the end IT user, you are dealing with a hardware vendor. They may or may not be the same person as your OS vendor, who is definitely not the same person as your software vendor, despite the fantasy that persists in some of these companies that they've locked down the whole channel.
You had this with the National Academy of Sciences report this week that said basically electronic voting isn't going to be secure by 2020. We should all go back to a paper ballot system.
Absolutely. We should go with mail-in ballots. Secure that.
Honestly, paper ballots I'm fine with. Alex, do you take a view on this?
Oh, I mean, I'm a huge paper ballot fanatic. I mean, the worst thing I've heard in technology recently, which is a huge prize to win, was like, let's do voting on the blockchain. Which is just
say blockchain to me one more time. I double dare you.
No, I don't want to. Back to being punched. I don't want that. I think voting by mail is great. I grew up in Oregon, which is a state that has universal voting by mail, and I vote by mail in California. I think it's fantastic. It's 100%, and it's great. We don't need to do anything else. And the thing that e-voting won't be safe by 2020. It won't be safe by 2200.
No.
I mean, the American electoral process is a prize, as we have seen in recent moments, that people will want to exploit for their gain or to cause disharmony and disunion.
Yeah.
So why would we make it more hackable and targetable when we know it's going to be a hacked target? So let's just use paper. Paper, by the way, comes from trees. And if you didn't know this, we grow a lot of those in America, and we have enough to make enough ballots forever. No shortage, 100% coverage. It'll be great.
It is
And
interesting.
trees are a renewable resource. You can grow them.
If you make a little tree and you put it in the ground, it makes a bigger tree in time. Lots of ballots.
If you ever drive through Washington State, just the acres and acres of managed forest with the sign saying this is getting cut down this year, this was planted this year. It's amazing.
Although it's
watching
not paper voting as it was done in the US. It's actually, there was an interesting talk at ShmooCon earlier at the start of the year about this. The old Florida voting machines that caused all the initial panic in 2000, where you actually had to physically punch through the paper, actually had a primitive denial of service attack built in. Because if you had a really popular candidate, then the space behind his paper got full of these little punches, and it became harder and harder to push through the paper to actually get your vote registered. And then we had the hanging chads and all that malarkey. But where do you stand on this, Dwight? Electronic or paper?
I think electronic with paper. I think that if you have a paper backup, which is how a lot of systems are going now, I think that that's good. But the problem is you don't even have to actually hack a system in order to create an issue. All you have to do is make people think that the system is insecure. So the discussions that we've been having this past year, that no election system is secure, that everything is hackable, that you can't trust your election system, is ultimately, I think, going to come back to bite us, because that way the system that we hold dear, we don't trust anymore.
Well,
that's my concern. I mean, like, this is the organ of democracy. This is how we breathe in and out as a country. And so...
But you don't even actually have to do it. You don't actually have to do it. I mean, the stuff the Russians were doing in 2016, they never actually got into an election system that we know of and changed any votes. Yes. But they didn't have to, because they created chaos around the system. That's all you have to do.
Yeah, and so it's a lower target that has the same prize. It's a good point. But also, if they wanted to hack and change the votes, given how every single time there's a kind of a black hat hackathon, they go, we hacked the voting machine in 4 seconds. Haha. Like, I'm curious if it's not a technical impossibility. Like, maybe it could happen in the future. That worries me. No. I'd rather literally grab a pen and vote. And if it costs a little bit more money to do it at the national and state level, that's a really good thing to spend money on.
You see, I mean, it's actually, I mean, obviously, no election is perfect, and back in the day, then there were ballot stuffing where people would, they get armies of people to vote on ballots before the election, stuff them into ballot boxes, but that required armies of people to do it. And in an age where everyone's got a smartphone, then someone's got to take a few photos of this and put it around, and it easily comes out. But with electronic voting, it's so easy to change it. And
to not leave a trail, which means that you can't figure out how it was done and make sure it doesn't happen again.
I was at the DEF CON voting village last month, and it was just...
That sounds really cool.
I know, I love that.
No, but an 11-year-old managed to get into a mock-up of the government, the state election system, and change the votes to, sort of make Dark Tangent the next Senate candidate. And it was like, this is so easy to do, and nobody seems... only a couple of months ago, Congress voted down, said, no, we don't need to spend any more money on this.
I'm curious.
That vote was dumb on a lot of levels, and I don't understand. I'm still baffled as to why it went that way when we have had nothing but coverage on how vastly insecure our election system is, how our 2016 elections were systematically under attack from state actors, and how the incentive to do that hasn't gone away.
I'm also curious how they got the 11-year-old to stop playing Fortnite long enough to hack the voting machine.
Oh, it was like an Ender's Game type thing where he thought he was playing Fortnite, but he really
but by the end of the novel, it turns out those were the Formics. It wasn't a game.
No, it turns out those were the electors.
I've got to say, it was really encouraging at the election, seeing how many relative youngsters were around. I mean, there were some talks that you couldn't get into unless you had a child with you, and people get really arsy, by the way, if you asked to borrow theirs for an hour. But
can I borrow your child?
But I mean,
you're just asking the wrong people.
Well,
ask a parent who has more than 3. They're like, yeah, you can have 2 here.
It was a good run.
Yeah, yes, you're 7. Good luck in the world.
Just see heels disappearing over the horizon to a dust cloud. But
this is the age of reason in the Middle Ages. You're fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we've had paper ballots. They've worked for plenty of years. I mean, Dwight, you've got some seriously close elections going on down there, and also some very weird tactics, as I understand it.
Oh, man, I understand that you guys are turning into California with your tofu and your silicone.
Oh yeah, the thing is, Ted Cruz said this weekend that he was worried that Beto O'Rourke would turn Texas into California with silicon, tofu, and dyed hair. I would love to invite Ted into the Montrose community in Houston, where there's plenty of silicon, tofu, and dyed hair already. It's already happened, Ted, under your watch, and it's just gonna get more. Beto is really interesting. He's kind of become kind of the Kennedy of Texas. He certainly bears a striking resemblance to it. He's been spending a lot of time on the road, and what's interesting is he doesn't avoid the red counties and the red cities. He goes into these towns and talks to people who are openly hostile to him, and oftentimes wins them over. And it's really, really hard for a Democrat to win a statewide office in Texas. It has not happened in a long time, and it has a chance to happen now. But I still would be surprised if he won.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because there have been this has been a fascinating election in terms of electronic campaigning, because there was a thing last week, I think, where the Cruz campaign took out, posted out on social media a picture of this Beppo character in a punk band as he was, Beta, sorry.
They only succeeded in making him look really cool.
I was going to say, it's just who doesn't want to be in a punk band in their 20s?
He's wearing a dress. He's got this little bit of facial hair, and I'm like, Ted Cruz is just the most boring person alive in comparison to this punk rocker.
Except for that period where he was killing people in San Francisco.
When he was the Zodiac Killer.
He was not the Zodiac Killer. I just really, really think that meme is hysterical, because it defies all logic.
Bringing this back to what we care about in terms of like net neutrality, which is one of my pet issues. Ted Cruz, the senator in question, had one of the best quotes from 2014 about net neutrality, and it's been near and dear to my heart. This is a tweet. I'm going to read it. Net neutrality is Obamacare for the internet. Again, one of those tweets that just gets everything wrong at once.
Well, the thing I find interesting is Obamacare has been incredibly popular. You look at the public mobilization for it every time it's threatened, and if you position net neutrality that way, people are like, "Oh, really?" Ooh,
the difference, though, is it's much easier to explain healthcare, as you know, than internet regulation. And also, the telcos, as we pointed out earlier in the program, have an enormous lobbying budget and can force their own way. But I just, Ted Cruz, for whatever you think about him politically outside of tech, inside of tech is wrong on net neutrality then, and also wrong now on social media regulation.
Well,
so it's essentially wrong twice.
The telcos inadvertently made an argument a couple weeks ago for net neutrality when the Santa Clara Fire Department pointed out that Verizon throttled their communications.
Largest wildfire in California history. Verizon dumped their data rates down to virtually zero.
At the end,
so being able to say, and it was a contractual mess, but the way it can easily be packaged and reported to a public is along the lines of, look, telcos can decide the interest of public safety more than your fire departments or your police departments can. Do you really want taxpayers to pay that much more money during emergencies because telcos view an opportunity for profit? Like, that's what comes out of this.
Yeah, but that wasn't actually a net neutrality issue per se. They followed the contractual rules. I mean, and so Verizon, I think, has landed with a big egg on its face. And I used to work there, so I have no particular love for the company because they bought AOL and whatever. Yeah. But I saw a lot of stuff come out that was a net neutrality issue when it wasn't. It was universal throttling. If they throttled just one service, that would be a net neutrality violation. Do I think Verizon's unlimited plans are weird? Yes. Is it dumb to have 3 different unlimited plans? Sure.
Yes.
Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
What is wrong with unlimited meaning unlimited? Call me old-fashioned about this.
But what I am saying is it would not be that hard to say, this is what happened during the Santa Clara fires. Yes. The fire department could not get access to data when they needed it to coordinate critical life-saving firefighting. Yes. You don't want telcos gouging you at a time like this, and under the law as it stands now, they can do that.
Oh, that I agree with
Verizon did is they basically handed weapons to anyone who wants to regulate telcos and make cases for here are how they should behave in times of national emergency. Yes. Here is how they should behave in declared states of emergency. Here is how they should behave at this point.
Yeah. I mean, the FCC has been pretty good about knocking down companies where they let their 911 service drop.
911.
Sorry, 911.
911 really does apply to something else in the American lexicon.
I still can't get used to it.
No. That's not meant to be a joke. I'm just
No, certainly. I mean, it's getting used to the American system of putting months before days, which seems completely logically bonkers, but what can you do?
One of the things that surprised me about that whole story was that the fire department had to buy a commercial data service from Verizon, as opposed to there being a public service data package that has no restriction on it at all. I mean, I think Verizon and all of the telcos should provide for fire departments and police departments unlimited data. Just give it to them because it's in the public interest to do so. Yeah. They're not going to be that big of a customer unless it's an emergency.
We'll see, you've just listed why they won't do it, because it's public interest as opposed to profit.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of rules about how you can sell things to the government, right? Yeah. It isn't like setting up private contracts. And I don't think I know enough to really comment on the exact intricacies, but you can't just sell anything at any price. There's a lot of rules.
Yeah.
Ask anyone who sells to the government as opposed to other private corporations, entirely different set of prices and so forth, because it's just the way it's set up. But did Verizon definitely do something that was very poor for itself? Yes. Yeah. And this is one of those rare times in capitalism when greed, contrary to the public interest, actually blew up in their face.
Yeah.
And that's a moment in which we can maybe see some positive regulatory change down the road.
My Evernote search is failing me at the moment, but there actually, for the telcos, there actually are service packages they do offer to fire departments, police departments, EMTs, things like that, which purportedly have different tiers for data, but probably did not anticipate the scope and scale of, say, wildfire fighting. And I'll keep looking to see if I can find the site and I'll link it to you. But it comes down... from a business perspective, this is also not great for Verizon, because AT&T can now come in and go, I understand, California, that you are on fire approximately 90% of the time.
Right.
We are happy to provide you with internet service. Here are our rates. They are 50 cents per blah, blah, higher than Verizon's, but we don't throttle. And then fire departments can be like, oh. And
it does seem a bit weird when you've got firefighters who are risking their lives to look after us all, and they're just cannot get a signal these days.
Especially when they're prisoners getting paid $1 an hour.
Yeah.
So we're using
$1 a day, $2 a day.
And then they're not allowed to become firefighters
because they have a prison record.
Because of it's
bonkers.
America.
I feel
the
like
problems.
this is my emoji right
edition.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that in a little while. In the meantime, we've got another quick message from one of our sponsors. Leo, take it away.
Fellas, if I could interrupt for a moment. Thank you, Ian. I just want to tell you a little bit about our sponsor, the people who make this show possible. Today, it's FreshBooks. FreshBooks, you've heard us talk about it. I was a FreshBooks customer for years when I went up to Canada to do the TV show Call for Help Canada. And I had to bill the folks in Canada for my time, my travel, my expenses, and I was hating it. It was painful at the end of the month. And then Amber told me about a brand new company starting up in Toronto. This is back in 2004, called FreshBooks. Now, let me tell you about FreshBooks. Most accounting software is built, frankly, for accountants, not business owners. FreshBooks is an owner-first accounting platform that puts you, the small business owner, back in control of your business. They call it approachable accounting. It's full industry-standard double-entry accounting. But don't put your fingers in your ears when I say that, because you don't need to know that. It's painless, automatic, bookkeeping and reporting. Industry standard, but you don't have to be an accountant to use it. Quickly generate and access accounting reports like the general ledger, trial balance, chart of accounts. It's all there in the dashboard. Share the reports with your accountant, your financial advisor, your tax preparer. Of course, FreshBooks lets you send, this is how I started using it, professional invoices in seconds. You could see invoices that have been sent, invoices that have been paid, invoices that are overdue, and this is the one I like, invoices that have been viewed. So your client can't say, well, I didn't get your invoice. No, you did. You saw it. You read it. I know. Accept online payments directly from the invoice. Clients, honestly, most clients do want to pay you. But paying bills is as annoying as making bills, right? So they put it off like I used to put off creating my invoices. But with FreshBooks, because there's a button that says pay, and they can do it online, you don't have to do anything. You don't have to set up any online accounts or anything. They just have a FreshBooks account. They press that button. It's easy for them. And you know what? On average, you get paid twice as fast. That alone should send you immediately to freshbooks.com/twid. You can create proposals if you're looking for new clients with rich text, content, and images. You can even get e-signatures from clients if they accept the proposal. That's all enabled just with the FreshBooks account. Send invoices, send estimates, send proposals, all in multiple languages, multiple currencies. This was big for me because I was billing in Canadian dollars, and that was a pain to figure it all out. FreshBooks just does it automatically. It's part of the deal. FreshBooks also automatically connects to your bank account and updates expenses daily, so you don't have to do all that data entry. You can import expenses in bulk. You can even, with the FreshBooks app, take a picture of a receipt, upload it, and let FreshBooks do the rest. This is so much better than doing it by hand. Keep tabs on your business no matter where you are with the FreshBooks mobile app. If you're still conquering the day-to-day tasks of creating invoices and collecting payments, FreshBooks is the magic wand you're looking for. It was for me. And if you have great ambitions and need robust accounting, FreshBooks will grow with you. They do it all. No matter what your accounting needs are, FreshBooks will help put you in the driver's seat. I'm proud to say I've been using FreshBooks. I started using it, like I said, in 2004. I've been telling you about FreshBooks for many years. There are now 24 million people who've used FreshBooks to painlessly send invoices, track time, capture expenses, and then get back to doing what they love. 24 million! Nice job, FreshBooks. I still have a soft spot in my heart for these guys. They're great. Try FreshBooks free for 30 days at freshbooks.com/twit. Enter This Week in Tech. There's a How Did You Hear About Us section, so please put This Week in Tech in there so they know you heard it here. freshbooks.com/twit. Thank you, FreshBooks. Keep up the good work, huh? Speaking of good work, back to Ian Thompson.
Thank you very much, Leo. It's right. Okay, we've had a few more bits on, and we actually have a live demo and thing. Now, I don't know if you heard, the International Space Station caught a leak last weekend. They didn't actually wake up the astronauts when they found it because it was such a small leak, but it looked at first as though a micrometeorite had struck the space station. Now, these are very, very small pieces of material, sometimes even just paint flecks, but they're traveling at such velocity that the kinetic energy they hold is massive. They've actually managed to crack one of the windows in the ISS just with, as I say, a paint fleck. But this hole appeared, and they tracked it down to the Soyuz capsule, which had recently docked with the ISS. Now, micrometeorites are a thing. People were prepared. And so they actually fixed it. First off, they stopped the hole by an astronaut putting his finger over the hole, which seems a very low-tech way of dealing with it. So instead,
just leave them there to have their finger over the hole.
That's right.
Billy,
Andre, stand there. No,
Can you imagine? You've got like your PhD in astrophysics. You've been in the Air Force and done your 100 hours of flight training, and you've gone through and you've taken your NASA photo with your pet cat or whatever your photo is going to be, and they're like, "What am I doing on the spaceship?" They're like, you're sticking your finger in the hole.
It was a very sort of in Rod we
turn
trust
to go home.
thing.
You're doing that.
But anyway, they then took a slightly more high-tech approach and used duct tape, rather the space equivalent of duct tape, and you can see this stuff here. This is called Captain tape. Now
Kapton, Captain.
It was developed in the 1960s for the space program, and the big advantage is that it has an enormously wide temperature operating range where it'll still stay sticky. So the label informs me it's good for down to minus 452 in freedom units and as high as 752. Somebody can translate that to Celsius. Because
it's negative 30 to plus 14 Celsius.
Oh, well, that
Very
makes it
nice.
perfectly simple. Why is America still in the imperial system?
Why are there
We invented it. We even done
5,280
it.
so
feet in a
great.
mile?
Oh my gosh,
If you're on the audio recording, we are now playing with the tape on set.
So it looks like this beautiful shimmering roll of coppery tape, and then when you pull it out, it's this translucent yellow. And it feels very 1960s, the future.
It was developed in the 1960s.
Yes, that's why the aesthetic
on
is solid.
all spacecraft, including New Horizons and the James Webb Space Telescope. The sun shield it's using to actually keep cool is made of this stuff covered in aluminium.
It's so pretty,
And
like in a very, very clean, streamlined way.
I want it, but I don't know what I'm going to use it for. So suggestions, I mean, it's just like...
Halloween costumes.
Strapping, yeah.
Although, you know what this reminds me of? One of the most exciting demos that Microsoft, not demos, but one of the most exciting research projects Microsoft has been doing with its HoloLens. They're testing it for remote learning, both on undersea labs and up in the space station. And the idea is that if you have the HoloLens and you've got the 3D learning environment, you can learn on the fly up there. So instead of having to send up staffers with a wide array of specific and eclectic skills, you can send up a specialist. And then if something breaks, you put on the HoloLens, you call your boys back in Houston, and they walk you through how to repair it.
Well,
and so between that and 3D fabrication, which they're also experimenting
Yeah.
with on the space station, they could in theory beam you or they could beam the printer the instructions to fabricate a part, and then they can have you walk you through how to fix it. And that really opens up who can be on spaceships and what they can do.
Oh,
with something
certainly.
like that. It's really exciting.
I mean, in the case of this, they have actually fixed the whole, and they've worked out, they think, where it came from. Because at first point, micrometeorite, and then the second point, I know you love this story,
this is so
Alex.
good.
Yeah.
It
This is a great
appears
story.
that apparently one of the Russian workers putting the spacecraft together accidentally drilled a hole in the skin of the spacecraft. Ooh. And rather than go to his boss and say, boss, I've kind of done a bit of an oopsie on this one, he just stuck some glue on it and said no one's ever going to find out. And of course, when the spaceship was in space, the glue degraded, and then we got a spot. So Alex, how do you feel about Russian engineering at the moment?
I feel fine about it. It was a small enough hole that didn't even wake up the astronauts. But like, can you imagine the stomach descending feeling you would get if you drilled a hole in something that was going to space that cost, like half of Kentucky to build? I think I would just find, well, I shouldn't make that joke on air, but like I would not handle that stress well. So I kind of empathize with the person that don't do that.
Yeah.
Go tell your boss this was not the right move, but oh Lord, do I understand?
Oh, indeed. And
Like-
I mean, so Dwight, you're from the home of the Space Command, as it were. How are people handling this sort of thing? I mean, duct tape. It just doesn't sound very, space.
Well, I think they were very glad it happened on the Russian side and not on the U.S. side. My favorite part of the story is that they looked at the hole, and initially, they thought it was a meteorite until somebody noticed that there were little skitter marks across the skin leading up front to the hole where it had where the guy had gone, oops, and did it. Can you imagine the feeling of the guy who did it, knowing that they found it?
Oh, yeah.
And the Russians have said, we're going to find out who did this, and there will be repercussions. Can you imagine what that feeling is like?
Especially in Putin's Russia, where repercussions don't tend to come with teddy bears and flowers.
Yeah, it's like,
Have they ever? Though?
do you pop
if you
pop
look at
out
the
to
history of Russia? It's not ever been.
I know Russian history best in the modern context as opposed to the Tsar era. So,
my gosh, no! There are a couple great series on Netflix that cover that, and the Romanov dynasty starts off with the guy who launched the dynasty hanging everybody else who would have threatened it in a familial capacity, including a 3-year-old. So,
is it Romanov or Romanov?
It was a British person who was doing the
I think Romanov is the way I was taught it. But
they
it
pronounced
could
it
just be
Romanov the whole time, and I was like, oh, well, you were closer to Russia than I am. I'm going to take your word.
Well, if you're looking for a new name for your startup, there you go.
Romanov?
There you go.
There you go.
Yes.
It'll go well in Russia.
It's either a dynasty or the Black Widow, one or the other.
And either way,
Okay.
okay.
Before this gets
Marvelly.
yes, too morbid. Actually, sticking with morbid theme, in fact.
Oh, good.
Theranos has finally shut down. It's like, I'm amazed it was still going. Maybe there's one person making the tea and just, handling management tissues. Just it was
Playing
all
Taylor
going
Swift's
so
bad,
well.
Playing Taylor Swift's Bad Blood over and over again.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But I mean, Theranos was a case in point where I think the entire tech industry had to look at itself and say, what did we do wrong on this? And it does appear that
I think she gamed it pretty successful. I mean, look, obviously the thing was made from smoke and mirrors, but you look at how cleverly she hacked the whole process of launching a startup, capturing the hype cycle, getting some funding, and avoiding consequences for as long as she did. It's like she sat down and did a longitudinal study of how startups work, and then was like, I don't have to have an actual product. All I have to do is nail these deliverables and keep this going for as long as I can.
it does seem remarkable that it did go on as long as it did, but also
because she picked a subject that people didn't easily understand. Like a layperson can't easily explain, this is why assays take the time that they do. These are the steps involved in testing blood. This is the amount that you need in order to get a decent sample size. Most people aren't going to know that or do the research on it. And so if you can go in and talk with authority.
Well, this is it. I mean, Alex, you deal with new companies all the time.
Yeah.
What were the warning signs that we really should have picked up on Theranos?
I have something after that for what's happening to them now, but on that front, I think that what I would look for, I talk to a lot of startups, and I cover early stage companies. It's kind of what I do, especially from a financial side. So what I see is that if you have vanity board members, now if you recall, Theranos had like Henry Kissinger on its board. Now, having a war criminal on your board in general, not so great. But also, what does he have to do with blood testing? And so the more
He's created oceans of blood, so
Yes.
obviously you should know how to test them.
he's tested blood generative device. Anyways,
I
he's
think calling 1,000-pound bombs blood generative devices is possibly even for
I stopped in the middle of that phrase. But companies that feel the need to pack their board with non-core people tend to be trying to cover up for something or puff themselves up to be more than they actually are. So to me, it's a bit of it's a front they put up. And the best companies that I know are always the companies that are the most transparent, that work the hardest, and that don't do things like that. They're not looking for fake accolades or fake plaudits. They just want to go out and build and make a big profitable company consistently. So in this case, they were a large corporation with huge valuation. They had fake or at least vanity board members. They had changing board commits. They didn't show financials, if I recall the book Bad Blood correctly. So every possible warning sign there was ringing. And still, people were willing to buy into it. But keep in mind, their investors, I think for the large part, weren't traditional VCs. It wasn't like this was Sequoia and Kleiner and other firms that we all kind of know by name. It was other entities. And to her point about hacking, she found a way to get the money. Doesn't make what she did okay.
No.
Fraud's fraud.
But I mean, Dwight, you've been covering these companies for years now. What are your key warning signs when you think we may be looking at another Theranos?
Oh, I think you look at somebody who has come in and can't really explain to a layperson what exactly it is that they're doing.
That seems to be pretty much every blockchain startup. But
and that's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, bugger, sorry.
A lot of this, I suspect, in blockchain. Granted, there are some people who you have legitimate companies there, but I know that the Texas Attorney General has shut down quite a few of them that aren't. I think you just got to make sure that there is a real product, that there's actually something that can be delivered, and that it really works. And you look at who's competing with them and what they're doing to see if it's really real.
I am slightly worried about Magic Leap on this one.
I once covered a sleep metric startup where the idea was that you'd have your device and slip it in. And I asked the founder, well, what are your qualifications for this? I said, are you an actual sleep scientist? Have you, done research in the field? What did this product arise out of research? She goes, well, no, I'm an undergraduate, but I've reviewed the literature extensively, and that was when I was like, okay.
That's a very Dr. Nick. Hello, everybody.
Well, it's also, I want to point out, it's also a very startup culture answer where, for me, and I don't know if this is the same for you or if I'm just really unfair, but for me, one of the warning bells is when someone's like, I noticed something. This is crazy to me. So I educated myself on it, and now I have a company. And
that's bad.
Well, those companies usually don't work out well because it may be crazy to them, but they're still approaching it from a layperson perspective.
Yeah, they don't have an expert's background in why that problem exists, how hard it will be to go about it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I get that. The enthusiasm, though, is critical to entrepreneurship.
Well, enthusiasm is critical, but there's informed enthusiasm versus uninformed enthusiasm.
It's necessary but not sufficient, as we would say.
Yeah, I think also,
sorry, please.
I think also we've seen a drastic change in the last couple of years about the way some of these companies are getting funded. I mean, we're seeing a lot with Kickstarter and the other sort of low ways of generating relatively low revenues. Yeah. But already the first waves of fraud are coming through there. We've had a smart backpack maker earlier this week who's now being hunted down because $700,000 of Kickstarter funds have gone missing. I mean, honestly, I kind of like the idea of crowdfunding projects. I've taken part in a couple myself. I've got no complaints with it whatsoever. But do you think they make this kind of fraud more likely?
Yes, on a small scale. But can I add one thing more to my answer before about warning signs and companies? The more you claim you're going to imitate Steve Jobs, or you do it without telling me, the more I presume you are so full of beans. People like to say I'm like, oh, you're being a jerk. They go, oh, Jobs was a jerk. I'm like, and you're not Steve Jobs. You're just a jerk. And she wore the turtlenecks, and I mean, like this is trying to become.
Her semiotics were flawless because she. Again, she did the Steve Jobs thing to imply that she had other things to think about, but she still presented as very strongly feminine, and that was also part of the thing was, she's bucking convention because she's a lady, and that was legitimately part of the whole story, because I guarantee you if it had been a middle-aged scientist who had spent the last 20 years of his life in a lab coming out wearing a T-shirt saying this stuff, it wouldn't have gotten the same press or the same benefit of the
19-year-old Stanford dropout, fastest self-made billionaire woman in history, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The Time magazine.
You're a real billionaire, though. You're not a billionaire until you sell the stock and sit on the Scrooge McDuck's piles of money.
That's not how we do in Silicon Valley. But I wanted to bring up something that happens at the back end of a company like this because I was reading through the coverage of its impending dissolution, and there was a phrase that kind of stuck out to me, which was the company intends to enter into an assignment for the benefit of creditors. Now, assignment, benefit, creditors, ABC. I didn't know what that means or meant. So I talked to a friend of mine who is an entrepreneur, and what it means is it's when you have to turn over every single thing you have, your IP, your cash, and your equipment, and then someone tries to just get rid of all of that for as much money as they can. So it's really like having your bones sold, and it's really
a liquidation.
It's the garage sale.
It's the garage
liquidation,
sale, but with a fancier phrase. So if you're curious what's happening to them, they're being sold for, the last $8 they can be.
So what I'm hearing is that a lot of Aeron chairs are about to come on the market for just $200 a piece.
Well, you laugh, but I actually got confirmation from because I got a tip that a company called North Security was going bust, and we got a couple of their former members coming in, and one of them sent me. I don't know if I can say this on air, but I asked him for proof that he actually worked at Norse, and he sent a picture of the Christmas card that they'd been sent by the CEO, which he'd despoiled in a biological way. But anyway, we found out that we were doing a Craigslist search down by their offices, and there were a ton of Keurig coughing machines coming on the market. We did a quick map search. Yep, it's their offices. They really are selling off the family silver.
Yeah, no, we work at home. My husband is also a tech journalist. We both work at home, and we got our Aeron office chairs for less than $300 a piece because we just kept looking in Craigslist. And anytime a startup goes under, those chairs go on the market for super cheap. If you live in the Bay Area, there's no reason to buy one new.
That was a storyline in Silicon Valley, in HBO's Silicon Valley.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, totally lifted from.
Yep. So that's very common there.
A lot of that show is a joke, but a lot of that show isn't really a joke either. If you've been around long enough to see the cycles.
Yes.
No, we do a lot of cringing and recognition when we watch.
That's why I don't watch the show. Actually,
it's upsetting after a while. Yeah, you're like, it's far.
It's very like there's a British show called Yes Minister about government, which is some of the key anecdotes of that actually happen and were fed to them by cabinet ministers. But yeah.
Just one last quick note before we move on. One lesson that I was taught about economic cycles is that towards the peak or a little bit after the peak, you'll see a rise in fraud, and that can be a warning sign that a sustained bull market or an economic boom may be coming to its end. And I don't want to be, a doomsayer here. That's my day job, but we're like 8-10 years into this bull cycle. We're seeing a rise in fraud that would tend to go together. So I'm not saying sell your stocks, but I'm also saying keep an eye out.
I honestly feel like the sign is when the San Francisco Chronicle starts running the packages about how people are leaving California in droves and it's unlivable.
I not only live here half time. I'm doing that. Yeah. Maybe I'm an indicator.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
Where else are you living?
Providence.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Okay. Of course. A lot of startups moving out to Texas. Largely around the Austin area, but you've got a fair few down there. Do you think Silicon Valley is losing its edge on this front, and you're going to reap the benefit from this, Dwight?
I think Silicon Valley will keep its edge because it has achieved critical mass. Although the economics there make it incredibly difficult. Houston is putting in a big push right now to improve its startup worthiness. They have launched an innovation district that's going into an old 1930s Sears building, and they are touting low taxes and a better quality of life. Houston is not any longer the smoggy mosquito town. Well, we still have the mosquitoes, but there's less smog.
The
and
100% humidity and the
so we still have that. But our air conditioning is top notch, and air conditioning is everywhere, unlike in San Francisco. So anyway, it's a lot of people I think are looking at what's happening. I remember when Carly Fiorina became CEO of HP, and she was talking about because of the inexpensive price of land and doing business in Texas that she was going to move more of HP's operation to the Houston campus that they had acquired from Compaq. That never happened. I think that tells you something.
Yeah. I grew up in an HP town. This is one of the few little things that my town of Corvallis, Oregon had in its name, a huge HP facility. And I grew up in the pre and post Carly, Carly era. And so I kind of saw the declines you're discussing in real time as my friend's parents got fired.
Yeah.
I went to graduate school in upstate New York right after IBM did a massive round of layoffs in the early 90s. And watching the economic ripple effects through upstate was kind of terrifying.
Staggering.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, I covered the original sort of when Fiorina first came in. I was kind of like, well, she's not Business Insider. Let's go and see her speak, and she's a brilliant public speaker. Oh, yeah. You know, I mean, I was at a sales conference of theirs in Holland. All the HP people were just like, wow, you know, we've actually got something here. And then the cuts started and the mismanagement, and that I'm still unsure about whether the Compaq merger actually helped them in the long run.
It did not.
No.
It did not.
Yeah.
No.
It's three no's and a maybe. So the panel's not giving exactly the thumbs up. What if we take two dying companies in the PC business and put them together? Will the car go faster? Oh, no, it's crashed. What a shock.
It's like the worst type of symbiont. Oh, my God.
I know. And then
Symbiosis,
they took the smart people and spun them off into the research and development arms.
Yeah.
And then, it just... And then Carlo Fiorina ran for office, and it could just like, I'm a job creator, and I loved the former HP execs who were just like,
no,
hello.
Yeah.
My job's in India right now. Thanks, Carly.
Yeah. I do actually wonder if politics is going to get more difficult as social media does give you more opportunities for on the fly fact checking.
I think so. I mean, I think also there's also...
I mean, there's the potential for misinformation, but when you think about it, she made those claims, and think about how quickly they were refuted, and that was picked up and made part of the story.
And on video as well. Yeah, they got a decent quality video.
Yeah, and think about how quickly that was, and then try to imagine something like that happening during the Clinton administration in the 1990s, where you could have had a bunch of IBMers saying the same thing, and it would have taken weeks to months to break past a local news cycle.
Yeah, no, I mean, there are dangers in that as well, though.
Exactly, because misinformation can propagate.
The rush to judgment as well. I mean, we saw this with the Boston bombings on Reddit. But
Oh, well, that's a good call out of essentially crowdsourced fake news.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
that was not Reddit's best moment.
New, and it's had some not great moments.
It's up at the pantheon of bad, but it's quite an extensive collection there at the top.
Yeah, we shall have to see. Okay, let's get another word in from our sponsors that make this marvelous podcast possible. Take it away, Leo.
Ian, if I could pause you for a bit and tell about, I need to be here for this one. Our sponsor, Wasabi. And the reason is I've known these guys for years. They're good friends. Jeff Flowers and David Friend. I know them from Carbonite, right? They created Carbonite. David I've known for years. He was the guy who created the ARP synthesizer way back when. He's a really interesting, serial entrepreneur. And it turned out when Jeff and David were doing Carbonite, they got many patents. They learned a lot about hard drives work, and they got many patents, particularly on the way to write to hard drives very efficiently. Directly to the metal without the operating system in the way. And when David kind of left, he didn't leave, but he retired from day-to-day operations at Carbonite, he and Jeff said, we know so much about hard drives. We really ought to do something when it comes to hot cloud storage. So they founded, and because it's hot cloud storage, right? That means it's active. They call it Wasabi. Wasabi hot cloud storage. Data storage is a big deal. I mean, for media companies like us, obviously, motion picture industry, film, animation, but every business now is generating huge amounts of data. In fact, the estimate is 163 zettabytes of data for business by 2025. 163 plus 21 zeros. That's a lot of data. So there is a very important financial calculation that every business has to make about where they store their data. It needs to be reliable, safe, fast, efficient, and it also has to be affordable. Because, you can get all the first four if you don't mind spending $1 million, but really, this is a business. We got to do this economically. And that's why Wasabi is here. They can efficiently and affordably store your data in the cloud. It's disruptive technology that's turning the industry on its ear. They're brand new, and I know no one knows the name, and that's why I wanted to come here and tell you, because I do know David and Jeff. I have huge respect for them, and I think what they're doing with Wasabi is something you need to know. If you're tasked with figuring out what are you going to use, is it Amazon, Microsoft, is it Google? I want you to add one more name to that list, please. That's all I ask. Wasabi hot cloud storage. 80% cheaper, 6 times the speed of the, industry leader. You know who that is. Let me say that again. That's important. It's not only 80% cheaper, it's 6 times faster. And it's simple. There's just one tier of service. There's no charge for egress. Free unlimited egress. By the way, that's a big cost that you really can't plan for in other services. How do you budget? You don't know how much data you're going to need to suck from that server. It's free at Wasabi. Wasabi is HIPAA compliant, FINRA compliant, CJIS compliant. So no matter what your business, this is safe, secure storage. And they have this thing called the Wasabi Ball. Go got to look at the website. That it's for migrating data, as much petabytes of data, simply, quickly, and securely. And if you are looking for a cloud storage provider, a hot cloud storage provider, you've got to add Wasabi to your list. In fact, you can try it with free unlimited storage for a month right now if you go to wasabi.com, WASABI, yes, like the horseradish, WASABI.com. Click the free trial link, and in order to get the unlimited, you have to use the offer code TWIT. You got to add this to, you investigate. 80% cheaper, 6 times the speed, and absolutely reliable. I think more than anybody else. Wasabi.com, use the offer code TWIT. Thank you, Jeff and David, for believing in me, because I believe in you. And I think everybody who's listening should consider it. Wasabi.com, offer code TWIT. Now, back to Thompson and Company.
Thompson and Company. I like the sound of that. Thank you very much, Leo. Right. Okay. We've had it's been a bit of an anniversary week as well, because Chrome has turned 10. Hard to believe that, when Chrome came out, Internet Explorer had, 95% of the browser market?
It's incredibly high. Chrome has the most, and then Edge, IE, and also Safari, and there's some other ones in there. But it's, in our world, 100%.
Yeah, and then Google is around about 20 years old. And it's difficult to believe. I think it was 99 I heard that Larry and Sergey had been talking to venture capitalists just to try and get enough money to get this idea off the ground. And they were looking to sell, I think, 10% of the company for $1 million. Which is... So, Alex, crunch the numbers for us. See, it's a Crunchbase after all. How much would $1 million investment in Google got me?
So currently, today, 10% of Google per Google Finance would be $81.5 billion. Which is a pretty good return on $1 million over 20 years. That compounds out quite nicely. And that's actually down a bit from its highs. So good job to everyone who put money into Google. You're a genius.
It is one of the problems.
Unless you sold and then you're taking a look at the calculator and I left this much money on the table by selling it this
That's everyone who sold their Bitcoin before December 2017, I feel.
Yeah. I mean, but we've seen this before, Dwight. I mean, one of the original investors in Apple sold out his stake for, what was it, $2,000 or something?
That's right.
And then still insists he's not bitter, which shows...
I would be bitter.
Remarkably evolved.
Well, Microsoft raised money from VCs before they went public just to get the pedigree, and Gates said that money just sat in the bank. We never used it. It was the most expensive VC round of all time. It was a joke, but they did that. But Google raised $100K, and then they raised $1 million, then $25 million, and then $10 million from Yahoo, and that was it. Amazingly profitable company. That's what's impressive about Google. They built so much with so little external capital.
I can remember looking at the search interface the first time, and when you contrasted it with Alta Vista, and it was so
MSN search.
It was so simple and so clean by contrast, though, and that real clarity. It felt like a real clarity of purpose. Where
the results were that good. I mean, it was just compared to the other mainstream browsers. I mean, Dwight, you were there for this. I mean, what won you over on Google?
I agree. It was the cleanliness. It was the speed. It was how accurate it was. I had done a big profile on Alta Vista when Compaq acquired it. And I went out there and kind of talked to them and actually looked at the servers that were Alta Vista, which were all in like one building at the time. And thinking, this is the pinnacle of the internet. It can't get much better than this. And just shortly after that, we got Google, and I think that it was that the simplicity of it is ultimately what drove it, along with the quality of the results. And I look at kind of the redesign of Chrome, and it seems like they've tried to go back to that. Although there was one feature that they removed in the redesign of Chrome, the tiles that showed you your most recent but most visited sites.
Yeah.
They reduced them to little tiny icons.
Yes.
And with the name under it, and I hate that.
Yeah.
And I found a way inside in the Chrome flag setting where you can undo it, and now I've got my beloved tiles back. I wrote something about that, but it is. I kind of like the fact that they have gone back to a simpler, cleaner look. It says a lot, I think, in their 20th anniversary.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the new scroll bar they've got on the side as well, which you've actually got to hover over to pop out. But it is worth remembering. I mean,
it's a Mac thing, isn't it? Isn't that what the way in Mac OS?
And I love it there too.
I don't use Mac, I'm afraid.
I can hate it across multiple vendors. My capacity to be irritated by it is infinite.
In terms of what Chrome, what Chrome has done, obviously it was Mozilla initially took on the Microsoft monopoly. Then Mozilla started to fall away, and Chrome has taken things back. But I'm now seeing, I think there's a definite shift amongst the pro users that I'm talking to, who are now getting so sick of Chrome's memory hogging. Okay, yeah, we have it, yeah.
Yeah, this is my
and
pet.
now people are going back to Firefox because it's better on privacy, it's better on memory, and it's getting there in terms of features. Now, honest, you obviously have a bone to grind in it.
Well, here's a question for everyone here. Are you guys good at tab management?
Yes.
So you're economical with your tabs.
Well, actually, perhaps not economical, but what I tend to do is have a couple browser windows open, and then I cluster tabs by function. So one window will be
you still have a bunch of tabs open.
like at least 12 usually.
Oh yeah. So you're bad.
I try to close them when I'm done with them, so that because I have when working in our content management system, if you don't, you get lost really quick.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, I don't think any one of us here has like 2 tabs open at any given time, which means we're using a lot of Chrome at once. And what I have found across devices, I run a gaming PC at home, and then I went Macs for work and whatever. Chrome is an enormous memory hog. And what was once, as Dwight said about early Google search, crisp, clean, fast, and better, has become, in Chrome's case, convoluted, awful, and iTunes-esque. And it makes me want to cry because when Chrome came out, it was literally built to go against that. We are fast. We are easy. You can't ruin it. It was like the iPad of browsers. And now it is the Model T.
The problem is that a browser is basically a second operating system for almost all of us because all of your apps are in your browser. They're only browser accessible. So
that wasn't a good idea.
So, it's a fine idea because it's portable. You can move from machine to machine.
That's true.
It lets you have a computing environment that's dependent on you and the collection of data that's associated with you, rather than a specific machine.
That's a very valid point. I recant my point.
So that's a good. But at the same time, if the browser is going to be your primary work interface, it should be better.
That's what I was aiming for. Is if you're going to put everything in the browser, can you at least do a good job? I have a Windows 10 gaming PC at the house. It glows red. It's great. I love it. And if I run like 4 to 6 Google tabs on it, Chrome tabs, I can run through 2 gigs of memory if they're just like Politico tabs, like just websites. What happened to make that even close to okay for the developers who made Politico.com or any other website, and also for how poorly managed it is by Chrome itself? That's insane. I think they just don't care about us Windows PC
There was
users.
a piece recently I'm regretting. I can't remember exactly the source, but someone was saying that one of the side effects of GDPR has been that websites have had to drastically redesign to comply, and as a result, they've had to start stripping out a lot of the crap, Politicos type crap that's on the page already.
Good.
And so a lot of websites, especially non-American websites, have become faster and cleaner and more friendly, more high performance, because they've had to strip out the crap.
Also, Google is penalizing you now if your site is loaded and bloated, and they will reduce your visibility in search results. One of the funny ironies about this is that when Chrome appeared, and as Alex said, it came out as the lean, mean system that was kind to memory. The memory hog at the time was Firefox.
Exactly.
Constantly complaining about Firefox.
Oh, it was chug.
That's right. And
it
now
would get hung up on different JavaScripts too.
Yes. And now it's reversed. And Firefox is actually pretty good in terms of memory.
Yeah. Although
at least it's better.
I have some distinctly 1990s type experiences these days, though, where there are in-browser apps that only work on Chrome and not on Firefox, and it reminds me of the browser wars when this site is best viewed in Netscape, or this site is best viewed in Internet Explorer, and you're like, why can you not build something that works across every browser?
Well, no, I have a tale to tell about that. Back in the mid-90s, when I was a struggling journalist and they just shut the magazine I was working on, I succumbed to the siren's call of public relations, and I did public relations for a couple of years, including working on the Microsoft Internet Explorer team. And we were supposed to sign non-disclosure agreements, and I'm lousy with paperwork, and somehow I never actually got round to signing the NDA. So when IE3 came out, they launched a major campaign against Netscape. They wanted... I mean, I was assigned to every screenshot for a program we had to redo in IE3 and send them out to magazines saying, "Hi, if you needed a screenshot, this is on IE3." I had a senior product manager at Microsoft said that the whole point of this campaign was to F something Netscape until they bled, and they went all out for it. Chrome didn't seem to need to do that. They just sort of took people in people went to it because it was lean, because it was better. It was fast.
But also look at where Chrome came from too, because it already had that reputational stuff with Google, where the idea was Google had already excelled at a search engine. People already really liked the other apps it was putting out. So why wouldn't you extend the same brand benefit of the doubt? And with IE3 especially, which, by the way, I was on the testing team for that because I worked for a website. I worked for a media website at the time, and I was on the dev side instead of the journalism side. And Microsoft flew the devs up every week and had us break different iterations of Internet Explorer 3 with different website designs so that they could debug it. So, small world.
But the weird thing about this is, back to the reputation point, now like Apple is Samsung and Alphabet is like old Microsoft, and Microsoft's kind of cool all of a sudden. So does this mean that like Edge is going to come back next? Because I've used Edge, I didn't really like it.
I was going to say that might be pushing it a little bit.
Because I don't think it's going to kind of work this next time around. But I mean, I did use some Firefox, but Dwight, I found that it's still used reasonable amounts of more RAM than I thought was reasonable to load text and display it on my screen. So I wasn't even that happy with current Firefox performance. I don't know if everyone just presumes you have 16 gigs of RAM, but I mean, I have 8. Yeah. And that should be enough to run Chrome without lagging or Firefox without lagging. I'm not asking much.
Somewhere there's like a Safari product manager who's just quietly crying that we haven't even mentioned that browser at all.
Okay, well, I mean, honestly, when's the last time you used Safari?
I was going to say,
I use it on my iPad. That's it.
Okay, so iPad. Dwight, Safari ever?
I use it on because I need to check our website. I use it daily to check the website, but mostly I use Chrome and I use Safari on the iPad and the iPhone.
Yeah, I use it on my iPhone. Oh, maybe actually Safari does have pretty good market share among us then, because we all have.
I don't use it, but notice how we use it mobile. It's not desktop for us.
Oh, you're that kid in class.
So 75%.
What, the one who cares about owning something?
No, I apologize. What do you use?
I use a Chromebook for mucking about, and I use a Windows machine for work.
I mean, for your phone?
For my phone, Android.
But which one?
Pixel.
Oh, okay, cool. And do you like that?
I think it's great. The key thing I went with Pixel is because we get the security updates first.
So it's the Google products, so you get the...
So you get the security updates as soon as they come out. Whereas if you go with Nokia or Huawei or whatever, then you it could come down, come down 6 months down the line.
So Pixel 3?
I'm actually still using a Pixel 1 because there's a Pixel 3 event coming up next month.
Yes, that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, which I think I should be invited to. We weren't too nasty about them last time. And
if you're watching the show, here's who's invited, Google.
But no, I mean, I had a Pixel 1, and it's the first time ever I've owned a phone, not bothered to put a cover on it, and of course I smashed the screen to hell and back. So
I got bangs on both sides of this one right now, and I shattered the one before it too. I gotta buy a case, but I'm just too lazy.
I know.
Well, you're also buying a new phone, so why worry about buying the case?
Yeah, because this is how I should spend my 401k money. Yeah.
But you see, this is Google in a way almost trying to steal Apple's shoes in this as well, because as I say, the Pixel 3 event is coming up. They're going to release another very expensive laptop, which, let's face it, without an internet connection is still pretty much an expensive brick. But they are gaining, I like it because it's secure and because, it's relatively fast. But Google as an operating system and a laptop vendor, what do you think of that?
I think they should bake in connectivity and take it sell it at a loss and get a bajillion customers. If you sold a laptop that came with constant internet connectivity to a certain point, I would buy it just for the sake of convenience. So that'll get me on Chrome OS tomorrow, and I'll pay for my own money.
I think
Google is taking on the old Apple II model where they're getting it into schools. And so you get younger people using it as they come up. That's what they want to use, and so as they get older, buy their own laptops. They look at Chromebooks, and I think that's a brilliant strategy. And it's one that, remember, Apple last year had its education event that kind of they had this little thing and then nothing ever came of it afterwards. Apple would like to get some of that back, but I just don't think they know how.
So on a purely anecdotal level, I do have a daughter who's in elementary school, and I've also got nieces and nephews who are in high school and college. And our island school system is all Google Chromebooks. And what's been interesting about that is watching these kids work collaboratively in the Google apps once they get old enough too. My nephews and my niece, all of whom now do things like essays and research projects, have no conception of working without sharing documents or without seeing changes and edits made in real time. And when they ask somebody to review something, they just shoot you a link and suck you into the Google app ecosystem that way too.
And it's also quite a political thing. If you throw someone off the Google Doc, then they're just like, that's
But
my
what's
grade
interesting
doc.
about that is there was I want to say it's Nielsen up in Portland recently announced that they were switching their office from the Microsoft suite of applications over to Google Apps because their younger workforce was like, why would I use Microsoft's Office suite when I'm already fluent and conversant in using Google's and I'm comfortable working in that and can set and these kids come into the kids, they're in their 20s. They come into
hey.
but they come into the office with workflows already in place and ideas on how to do this. And Google and by winning education and by changing the way people regard their intellectual property and collaboration, they're winning the workplace too. Like in another 10 to 15 years, I think you're going to see Microsoft. I mean, this is one of the reasons I think Microsoft is now doubling down on its emphasis on digital transformation, its use of machine learning and time management in all of its Office apps is they're trying to claw back some of that mind share from people who have already 10 years of investment in the Google experience from elementary school on up.
Yeah, I think that the fact they didn't build a lightweight version of Word much earlier on like just Word.com and just make it Google Apps with a Microsoft sticker on top was a mistake because they had the mindshare back then to drive adoption when Google Apps didn't, and now Google Docs is the de facto standard at least every startup, and if it's every school too, that means all the new stuff's coming up in GDocs.
But I watched the elementary kids in my daughter's school because my daughter's my daughter's 7, and I watched those kids, and they already regard the Google environment as their default environment. They might play Minecraft, but as far as they're concerned, school is done on their Chromebooks, and they're very excited, and they love the experience of having it and being able to touch on it and all of that. And I think that if you cover tech, you pay attention to how those educational experiences are shaping computer users because they're the ones who are going to be affecting enterprise spending in another 5 to 15 years.
Well, Dwight, you raised a very good point in that Apple was, in the 80s and 90s, Apple was excellent at getting their kit into schools. But nowadays,
I owe my entire career to Apple colonizing schools in the 1980s.
But could they do that again? Because, Apple is now much too focused on the high-end, high-cost thing. And Google seems to think, right, we'll have some of that market, and they'll slid in there. Yeah. I mean, Dwight, do you think Apple can pull it back?
Schools are too cheap to want to buy Apple products at the scale that Apple wants to sell it to them. They might be able to sell low-end iPads, but kids probably need a little bit more than that. They need to have more computer skills than just knowing how to use an iPad. I think the Pixel, the Chromebook Pixel, is an excellent idea, so long as when they take it home, their parents have internet access as well. There's a lot of low-income folks who don't actually have even home broadband. They rely on it on their phones, and so there's a large number of folks who that just doesn't fit.
That might be Google's opportunity to build out their mobile universe that way then, because if they can sell you a phone package with a discount internet connectivity bundle,
I think that's going to be a great leveler. I mean, when I moved to SF 6-7 years ago, I had a dinner with a bunch of Ford people. This is back before Tesla kind of blew up and became a thing. They're like, what do you think we should do with Ford? I'm like, build in internet to all your cars and make it free. They're like, oh, we can't do that. It's expensive. And I feel like that argument was correct then, and it's correct now for PCs too. I think pan connectivity will be a market changer in a way to build market share where companies have lost it.
Well, what's kind of funny
it may come from 5G.
Yeah.
Because 5G, I think the ubiquity of it, once it really catches hold, will enable that.
I've got a nasty feeling the 5G rollout's going to be completely botched.
I hope Dwight's right, but I think you're right.
When you look at the amount of trouble we have with 4G, where people were just saying stuff was 4G, which plainly wasn't. Remember WiMAX and
we're in
enhanced.
We're in that phase now with AT&T's 5G evolution, but I think they learned a lot from that at the time, and I think when 5G comes, it'll come for real. And Verizon is going to launch here. Houston is one of the cities where it's going to happen. Fixed broadband 5G, and I think the folks here with Comcast and AT&T are a little bit nervous about that for their home broadband, because if 5G works as advertised, it could be a game changer in terms of home broadband. And if they don't put such heavy data caps on it that it becomes useless as a home broadband product.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, when you have to have "if" in the sentence twice, then you know that it's not a done deal yet.
Okay, but to argue against that, though, back when we were talking about how Alta Vista had some servers in a room, and we thought that was how the best internet was ever going to get, we feel that way about wireless internet today, right? So the economic forces behind this, the profit available, I think will drive it forward. And so by the time my kids are in college, it'll be good. Yeah. In the meantime, we'll suffer. But I think eventually we get this right, and eventually it's amazing.
Yeah,
it took about 5 to 6 years for LTE to get it right, to get where LTE was ubiquitous and comfortable. It still isn't 100% reliable, but it certainly is better than it was at the beginning. And I think you're looking at probably 5 to 6 years again for 5G to hit that same point.
We shall have to see. Right now,
when Dwight's here doing his 300th show, we will we'll be able to check back in and check on that prediction.
I remember back in the day when 2.5G was the best.
Please promise us that you'll reassemble us all so we can talk about that prediction. I would love to see how it turns out.
100 more shows, and poor Dwight. I mean, that's a lot of twit.
No, I said 250 more.
I was trying to cut that down because I don't want you to kill him.
No, I have faith in him. I don't know where you are on that.
Okay, I have no comment.
Okay, right. Now, before we go, here's a quick view about a new show that's coming on Twit tomorrow, and it's Valley of the Geniuses.
Hi, everybody. I want to introduce a brand new podcast of the Twit Network. We don't do new podcasts very often, and we haven't done an audio-only podcast in a long, long time. A couple of weeks ago, I interviewed Adam Fisher. He's the author of a new book called Valley of Genius, the uncensored history of Silicon Valley, as told by the hackers, founders, and freaks who made it boom. It's a book, and you read their quotes. But Adam told me something interesting. He said, this book is based on hundreds and hundreds of hours of tape, with over 200 of these amazing people who made Silicon Valley what it is today. I said, Adam, forget the book. That's a podcast. So on this feed, from now on, every week, you're going to get a little snippet of one of Silicon Valley's greats. In some cases, it's an interesting environment. He went all the way to Paris to talk to Tony Fadell, and followed Tony around on a motorcycle to get the interview. He talked to Wozniak at his favorite beanery in Silicon Valley.
I had two goals in life. One was to be an engineer, and the second was to be a fifth grade teacher. And I did that for 8 years.
So there is a lot of atmosphere in this. There's some amazing quotes and conversations. And I hope you will listen to Valley of Genius starting next week. Right here. Subscribe in your favorite podcast application. Look for Valley of Genius and get episode 1 next week. Please subscribe. You won't want to miss a minute. I'm Leo Laporte. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week with Valley of Genius.
Valley of Genius there. It does look like a very interesting show indeed. Sadly, however, this Sunday's Twit is coming to an end, but I'd like to thank our distinguished panel. Dwight, based out in Houston, thanks very much indeed. Anything coming up this week that we should be aware of on your end?
No, it's business as usual for me. I'll be very interested in watching the Apple event on in the middle of the week this week. I think that should be really entertaining for 2 hours.
2 hours of Apple staffers going and faking spontaneous orgasms throughout at the latest latest tiny shiny.
I didn't know we could say that on Twit.
I don't know. I'm sure it'll be beeped out if I can't. Lisa Schmeiser, thank you very much for breaking off your holiday to come here. And it's yes, you have. I take it you'll probably be judging from the watch. I'm suggesting you might be keeping an eye on Apple, but because you're a B2B, then.
I'll be prepping for Microsoft Ignite, which will take place from September 24th to 26th. That's when Microsoft basically issues their mission statement for the next year or two, tells you where their products are going. It'll be kind of interesting to see how they pick up on the digital transformation theme that
Sundar.
Thank you. No.
Satnad.
Satya Nadella.
Yeah,
that
Satnad,
Satya Nadella
right.
has been embroidering on after they finished mobile first, cloud first. They've now moved on to digital transformation. I'm curious to see whether or not AI will be the starring player, because that seems to have been an emergent theme in 2018, especially among B2B, that AI will save your business. So let's see if that happens.
I don't know.
We're both looking at Alex and I both looking at each other like,
right now the problem with artificial intelligence is it's made by human intelligence. So there's that.
And it's not artificial intelligence.
Oh God, I even read Satya Nadella's book. I feel so bad about that.
Dude, what did you call him?
I didn't. He called him Sundar.
Dude, you can't.
No, got that one. I just wanted to say Satnad, but it just came out wrong.
No, I was like,
you
it's an
think
S,
that's bad?
it's an S.
I was just cleaning out the bookshelves, and for some reason I was still holding on to a copy of Bill Gates' Business at the Speed of Light, which he wrote in 1992 and dismissed the internet as just another fad like CB radio.
You should have live tweeted passages from that. That would have been so great.
It's a classic. And there's a reason I've never thrown it away.
Yeah.
I kind of want to
and then
read
he
that
wrote
now.
The Road Ahead, in which he tried to invent the internet. So.
Yeah.
I have The Road Ahead back at my house in Oregon where I grew up in my childhood bedroom. I never read it, but I own a copy. That's weird. All right.
We were geeky kids growing up.
I was super cool, obviously.
I had a collection of Stephen Jay Gould editions.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that outgets me, but still. Okay, right. Well, thank you very much to everyone. Thank you for watching in, and another twit is in the bag.
Amazing.